City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
July 9th City Council special meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order, and the mayor will call the roll, please.
Mayor Dodd. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Escobar.
Here.
Councilmember Bowers. Here. Councilmember Leidy. Here. Councilmember Downing. Here. Councilmember Brown. Here. Councilmember Widgeon. Here. Councilmember Durant-Mullica. Here. Councilmember Wilford.
Here. So welcome everyone. Tonight we have the pleasure of Heather Dyer coming forward and as a candidate for our city manager. You're going to make a presentation to us, and then you can do a Q&A with you afterwards. So maybe you just want to talk about yourself a little bit. I'm sure you know how to introduce yourself, so I'll just get started.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Dodd. I'm happy to be here again. I'm Heather Dyer. I'm a candidate for your position as city manager. For those at home and who aren't familiar with who I am, I was in this process a couple years ago when you were in the search for a city manager. Was invited to come back and interview with all of you. I'm honored to be here this evening. I'm going to go through a presentation that consists of my first year game plan. And a portion, the second half of this presentation, I'm going to transition into sharing more about myself, who I am as an individual and a leader. And so you all can get to know me a little bit better. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. Okay. So, Northglenn 2.0. Why 2.0? In the time that I've spent getting to know the organization and the community, I know that residents care very deeply for the city of Northglenn. You guys are on the cutting edge of some remarkable efforts. And so as I was putting my first year game plan together and talking with directors last week, I spent 3 days coming up to the city, and I met with each of the members of the leadership team one-on-one, typically for about an hour, a little more, depending on the individual, and really wrapped my arms around the challenges and the opportunities that exist here in the city of Northglenn. So I'd like to thank the leadership team members for spending the time with me. I really appreciate that because I know everybody's really busy here at the city. And I would say that they really were a source of inspiration for development of my first year game plan, Northglenn 2.0. I'm a technology geek, so when I think about iPhones, I love Apple. That's a theme that really resonated with me in putting together this first year game plan in terms of what value am I going to provide to all of you and the community at large in terms of becoming your next city manager and helping move the vision of the community forward. Stability. Stability is the number one common theme that I heard from members of the leadership team. There is a strong desire to have stability at the city manager level. As I allude to in my first year game plan on page 2, I would be the 11th city manager to serve the city of Northglenn. I would also be the first female city manager to serve this community, which I think is probably very timely and remarkable in the concept of everything that's happening in the city of Northglenn right now and the progress that's taking place. I think that's a really important thing to know. So the foundation of my game plan consists of 4 action steps that I'll dive into a little bit deeper here. And I really think that these 4 action steps that I'm going to take in the first year, and some of these are going to happen simultaneously. It's not going to be one step after another. It's a multifaceted approach, so feel free after I'm done to ask me any questions about any of these steps and dive deeper with me. So the first action is to develop council manager performance expectations and to build leader expectations for success. I think this is important because this is about me and all of you coming together and really agreeing upon what performance expectations for my role look like for the remainder of 2018 leading into 2019. Additionally, I think it's important that we establish what periodic check-ins look like. I think consistent and constructive feedback is important for a city manager to be successful in an organization and a community, and that's true in terms of feedback from residents. And so what does that look like? What are your styles in terms of providing feedback to me? The third critical piece is I think I'm in a position as potentially your new city manager to initiate an update of the city manager performance evaluation. My understanding is that evaluation tool is somewhat outdated, and so I think given the vast network that I'm part of in Colorado, I know that I can grab some examples from other cities, share those with Corey, work with council as a whole, and come up with a good tool for all of you to rate my performance. I've listed on page 2 several steps that I'm going to take within the first 30 days of becoming city manager. The first bulleted item speaks to the agenda packet process. I think it's really important for a city manager to own this process, recognizing that I play a facilitative role in working with the city clerk and making sure that the content that comes from departments is in good working shape, that I've done the review and I know that everything's in order before I hand off to Joanna and her staff, that it's quality and it's representative of an organization committed to excellence. So I think there's some fine-tuning from conversations and talking with Joanna last week that can be done just to move the needle and make small improvements. I think it's also important to evaluate expectations and outcomes for leadership team meetings, and then also re-engage the city clerk in those meetings. I'll also begin the recruitment and the hiring process for the Public Works Director. This is a really big gap in the organization right now. And so I know from talking with Paula, there's a job description pretty much ready to go. So I think this is something that's a matter of me coming into the organization, really making sure I agree with what's in the job description, and then getting that out on the street and really utilizing resources that I have within my network to really find top quality prospective applicants to apply to be our next Public Works Director. I did talk about some of the steps that I would take in my first interview with that hiring process, and I'm happy to revisit that more specifically if you'd like me to later this evening. I'll conduct performance expectation and alignment conversations with leadership team members. I think this is really important anytime you have any type of management transition, that you have an opportunity to sit down and really touch base with direct reports, find out what's important to them, what expectations they have of me, and then the expectations that I have of them. I'll provide leadership and collaborate with departments on key projects. There's so much happening here. We have Carl's Farm, we have the Civic Campus Master Plan, we have the move to the new Justice Center. So I view my role with those projects in terms of really diving in and getting up to speed on where specific projects are at. I had an opportunity to do a little bit of that when I met with department directors last week. I think it's also important to really establish expectations for what my role looks like. I do not view myself as coming in being the project manager per se. As city manager, I view my role to be the city manager and to make sure that I'm at that level and I'm making the decisions that need to be made at my level and working alongside key staff who are the experts in their respective areas in order to make sure that projects are moving forward. I'll keep the proposed 2019 budget process moving forward. Jason and I met last week and he's already indicated there's a couple of key dates. August 6th, you all are going to be talking revenues. And on August 20th, you're going to be hearing presentations from department directors on their services and proposals for 2019. So it's really important that we keep that process moving forward. the move to the new Justice Center, I had the opportunity to tour the new Justice Center with Chief May last week, and wow, it's a fabulous facility, and you all should be very proud of the investment that you've made in the new Justice Center. It's world class, and I think it really sets the bar high for what future construction looks like in terms of city facilities in the city of Northglenn. I also know that there's plans to have a community celebration, and so I think that's a really important piece. But my role, I believe, is to really make sure all the pieces are coordinated, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and everything is seamless. Another focus is really knowing that there's so much else out there in terms of the zoning code update, there's park and recreation projects, there's a focus on open space, the Ralston House is being constructed, making sure that all of these projects keep moving forward. The second action item that I've included for your consideration is keeping the key priorities, but I wanted to expand in just a couple areas for you this evening. And one of the key things that I heard from department leadership is we like the 2018 work plan, so keep using it, don't change it. I heard that loud and clear. I think it's a great tool, and so my objective would be to keep using it, to update it, refine it based on what comes through the 2019 proposed budget process, really align those documents and make sure we have a good roadmap for the future. A couple areas that some department directors mentioned to me include the 2014 vitalization vision. I think that there's an opportunity if council desires, and I'll say it's if you desire, to have a work session in the spring and really look at, is that vision still relevant? It may be. Along with that, the 6 goals that council identified several years ago to do a check-in. I know from talking with directors that there was some work done in terms of rewriting, and wordsmithing those goals. So do you want to move forward with that rewrite, or do you want to stick with what you have leading into the spring? Those are a couple of thoughts for consideration for next year. The other piece that I think is really important to add that I've noted in this section is to develop a long-term financial plan. There are a lot of existing financial commitments, significant financial commitments. You've made a $23 million investment in the Justice Center. You're going to potentially make a $53 million investment in the Civic Campus. Just the first phase of it with the Recreation Center, the Senior Center, and the theater. So knowing what the big picture looks like is important to me as a leader, and being able to see how that plays out from a financial projection perspective, because we need to know the what ifs. What if we have an economic downturn of some sort? How would that impact the city of Northglenn? And so we have a very talented finance director and staff, so I know it's completely doable to pull some type of long-term projections together, which I think would really, again, intended to be a tool for us when we're bringing information forward to all of you and to help you make good informed decisions. The third action item is to strengthen organizational culture. You have a great culture here at the City of Northglenn, and the items that I've listed is not to say that anything's broken here at Northglenn, because that's not what I'm saying. When you're building a high-performing culture, you want to make sure that you have systems in alignment and they're sustainable. And so based on some of the feedback that I heard from staff, there's some key areas that I'd like to look at as city manager. Asking me to come into this organization and you're saying, Heather, we want you to manage this organization. So this is what I need in order to really set the foundation for success. That includes an employee engagement survey. I had an awesome opportunity to meet with department directors. They're fabulous people. I have yet to really interact with the organization as a whole, and I think it's important to give employees at all levels of the organization a voice. And when we talk about moving the needle on ourselves, it's like holding up a mirror in front of you and really providing feedback in terms of what can you do better. So I think there's always opportunity to do better. Conduct a citizen survey. Now I know the citizen survey is a package proposal in the 2019 proposed budget. Jason shared with me the package proposal, so I have a good idea of what's on the horizon. I think conducting a citizen survey is really a way to establish a baseline to gauge resident satisfaction. How do citizens feel about our services? What do they like? What do they not like? It's not the end all in terms of public perception, but it's a tool. It's one tool that we can use to continue to move the needle here at the City of Northglenn. I'd also like to look at the development of core values. I know the leadership team spent some time developing core values. My approach would be a little bit different in terms of that development. I would come at it from more of a perspective of engaging a committee of employees at all levels of the organization and to see what would come of that. With core value development, I don't think it's a matter of inventing something new. It's really a matter of creating an environment where employees can talk about what is our culture, what makes us, what makes performance here significant, whether it be accountability, whether it be integrity, whatever those key adjectives look like in terms of employee engagement, and then putting it in a form to really help reinforce, especially when we bring new employees into the organization. Northglenn has significant tenure, which I think is awesome. It's something I've been fortunate to experience at the City of Wheat Ridge. But I also know you're doing a lot of things that require us to go out and recruit new team members here to the city. So I think it's important from an onboarding perspective and just an overall cultural perspective that we know who we are from a core values perspective. I'd also like to take a look at the compensation plan. I know there have been some interim. Jason and I talked about a 9% health insurance premium increase for this year, and there were no civilian increases this year. There were some changes made to the sworn compensation plan. People are our greatest asset here at the city. And so I think there's some opportunity to take a look at the compensation plan and really wrap our heads around, is this the best way to do compensation in Northglenn? The answer may be yes. From my outside perspective, I think there's some opportunity to do some things a little bit differently that will help retain our long-term employees and also attract potential new hires in the future. All of that said, I think we would culminate with a look at our overall performance management system. In talking with Paula, I know that there's different thoughts about pay for performance and how you reward merit increases. So I think there's opportunity. I don't know what it looks like specifically, but I think that there's a lot of best practices out there, and I think as Northglenn is really a driver of change in the community, I think that we really need to make sure our compensation system, our performance management system, those systems are aligned with the quality of employee that we want to reward and attract. The fourth action item is to engage the community, elected officials, and the organization to build greater collaboration, enhance community, and ultimately move the city forward. You'll recognize this section on page 4 and 5 from the handout that I gave in my first interview. I have made some tweaks to some of those bulleted items, but I won't go through all of them, but from a community engagement perspective, I think it's really important for me to be visible and accessible to the public at meetings, at community events, and just in general. If somebody wants to come into the office, email me, pick up the phone, schedule a time to have a conversation with me. In terms of elected official engagement, I've touched on this a little bit already, but really establishing how you would like to communicate with me. Is that meeting with me every week? Is that meeting with me once a month? Is it I meet you for coffee? What does that look like? Lunch?
you have an opportunity to let me know what that looks like. From a leadership team engagement perspective, I've touched on a couple of these pieces, but I think it's really important to establish a more formal framework for leadership team meetings and also set performance expectations with my leadership team members that I supervise directly. And then from an employee engagement perspective, I did change bullet 1, and I've changed it to get out into the organization and be visible by holding Meet the City Manager meetings. And this is not come to City Hall and meet Heather. This is Heather going to the maintenance and operations facility, going to the rec center, being out and about in the community, and capitalizing on the opportunity to meet city staff and different members of the community. So here's where I'm going to transition into sharing a little bit more about me as an individual and a leader. I've mentioned the phrase move the needle, and this phrase really is about creating strategic change in an organization. And I'm fortunate that during my time, my 11 years at the City of Wheat Ridge, that's what I've been able to do. I'd like to say that I have a proven track record of departmental leadership at the City of Wheat Ridge. I'm an administrative services director. I report directly to our city manager, Patrick Goff. We don't have deputy city managers or assistant city managers. So I think I'm one of the luckier directors because I get to do a lot of different things. We have 5 departments at the City of Wheat Ridge. I manage a $3.8 million department budget, and then I'm responsible as budget manager for a $65 million citywide budget. I have 7 direct reports that you see there on the screen, and each of those positions are very different. Everything from executive assistant to the assistant to the city manager to the HR manager to the IT manager, accounting manager, communications manager, purchasing and contracting agent. The key operational areas that I have oversight over are shown here. Again, varied areas of responsibility. In a larger organization, and this is true for Northglenn, these are departments. They're divisions within the City of Wheat Ridge because the scale of our organization being a little bit different than yours. I have a proven track record. I know one of the questions on the minds of some here tonight is, what's Heather's role and experience in managing capital projects? I can tell you I've never managed a roadway project. I've never managed the construction of a city facility. However, I've taken liberty to share with you some of what I have done from a capital project perspective. So currently in my role as budget manager, I oversee the CIP, the Capital Investment Program budget, the 2E Fund 31 budget, and that's the special fund that we created when we received a 1/2 cent increase in sales tax in order to construct 4 key infrastructure projects and issue bonds in the amount of $33 million. I was staff support to 2 task forces, the DIRT task force in 2 different iterations. The latter iteration in 2016 led to the successful voter approval of the increased sales tax initiative and debt approval, which was exciting to be part of that because I was part of that effort in 2007. At a time when the economy was bad. Wheat Ridge has significant unfunded infrastructure needs, well over $50 million worth of infrastructure needs. So these were citizen task forces that were brought together by our former mayor to take a look at prioritizing the citywide needs. From an annual budget perspective, I review the capital outlay requests, I review the technology requests. Just last week on 4th of July, I sat in my office totaling over $500,000 worth of IT requests that we've had submitted for our 2019 proposed budget. So there's significant need there. So part of my role is to review those requests and really recommend to my boss, Patrick, what the high priorities are, and then we figure out how to fund them by balancing out the budget. I negotiated the Comcast franchise renewal in 2015. I was part of the city team on the negotiations for the Excel franchise renewal about that same time. Prior to coming to Wheat Ridge,
I worked in Parks, Trails, and Recreation. And during that time, I was a right-hand person to the Director of Parks, Trails, and Recreation, and was involved in master plan updates, going to micro-development meetings with our planners, our engineers, talking about trail easement issues, opportunity to get parkland dedication, trail extension opportunities, playground replacements, and grant writing. So while I want to acknowledge that my experience with capital projects is not the exact same thing in terms of saying I've managed the construction of a capital facility, I've been around capital projects throughout my 20-year career. And so I know enough to be dangerous, and I'm excited about the opportunity to take that next step and really view it as a natural transition for me in becoming city manager. I included a picture of our Wheat Ridge sign down at the bottom of the screen because the marketing and branding logo project was one of my babies in 2008 when after I started with the city. And so again, I worked with an engineer who actually worked with the architect to come up with the design for that sign, but I was out in the field with Mark, our engineer, making sure that, the specs pre-actual construction, but then when construction took place, he took me out in the field with him, and we made sure everything looked to spec. So that's the pride and ownership that I take in projects. The other thing I wanted to point out was investing for the future. One of the things that was really important to me when the city was successful in getting voter approval on the sales tax increase was to make sure that we put a brand and that we did all that we could to communicate how we are being good stewards of taxpayer money. So I worked with our public information officer and my assistant to the city manager, and the investing for the future was the brand that we got buy-in from the internal staff team and then the city council for communicating how those bond funds are being used. In terms of my impact from an intergovernmental collaboration and regional level, in 2013, I worked with the fire chief of the Wheat Ridge Fire District. Fire District is no more. They merged with West Metro Fire District a couple years ago. I chaired and authored the report that really consisted of financial analysis, which told them, you need more money. You need to look at increasing your mill levy. After presenting that to the board, they took that recommendation. They went and sought a mill levy increase. It wasn't enough, and they knew that wasn't going to be enough, so they decided to go ahead and merge with West Metro Fire District, which was another recommendation in the report that the Blue Ribbon panel brought forward. Foothills Animal Shelter Board of Directors. I served on this board for 6 years. I served as president for 2 years. One of the significant impacts that I made in serving on the board as president was the development of a long-term financial plan. The board had a tendency to have some circular discussions about finances. Expenditures are too high. We need to do more from a revenue perspective. So when you put it on paper and you really make some thoughtful projections about what the future looks like, that helped us have more constructive conversations about the budget for that organization. I also managed the executive director transition that took place in that organization before I stepped off the board. Currently, I'm involved in helping figure out what to do about homelessness. It's a significant issue that all of us are facing. And so we have a collaboration of pretty much every entity in Jefferson County right now. And we'll be meeting, I think, in a couple weeks to really talk about how we're going to take our efforts to the next level, including trying to figure out how to fund a regional homeless coordinator, how to make sure that there's good communication amongst the different agencies, both from the city perspective and then the law enforcement perspective. There's certain steps that we want to take with the point in time survey because that survey is really tied to federal funding and we need to get more of it in Jefferson County. So that's a role that I'm involved in right now. The next two slides, I've got a lot here. I'm not going to list all of it, but I'm just going to point out a couple things that I'm really proud of. Increasing purchasing limits. last year, my boss, the city manager, my purchasing agent, and I were able to go to council and get approval to increase our purchasing limits from $35,000 to $75,000. That's really the result of building a culture of trust and accountability. There was also a significant need from a staffing perspective that was really important to me because at the time I had 1.5 FTEs in purchasing. And with the significant increase in volume of capital infrastructure projects, I needed to better align that desire for level of service while also knowing that I couldn't necessarily hire an additional 2 to 3 people to support purchasing. Another area that I think it's important to point out to you all is the implementation of an HR business partner operating model. One of the things that's really important to me is when I identify a problem and I look at a service area that's either understaffed or maybe not performing at an optimal level, what can I do about it? And working with my team members to figure out how to create change if change is needed. I was able to hire an HR manager who had worked with this HR business partner model where you basically take your HR employees and you call them business partners and they become consultants for departments throughout the city. This type of operating model really works well for the organization in Wheat Ridge because of our size. It's helped create credibility within the organization and address a lot of the issues and frustrations that I would hear from department directors. So that's one of the things I'm really proud about. From a continuous learning perspective, I'm a firm believer that no matter where you're at in your career, you have the opportunity to learn and move the needle on yourself. So that's something that's really important to me and that I do on an annual basis. I'm a graduate of the University of Denver. I have a BA in political science and public policy. I'm a graduate of CU Denver, where I got my master's degree. I worked at Greenwood Village full-time and went to school on the weekends to get my master's degree. I've completed several certificate programs. Most recently, in I believe it was 2016, I completed Leadership ICMA. And part of the requirement to graduate from that program is to do a consulting project. And I chose Navajo County, Arizona, which is a very remote area. And I was able to do significant financial analysis for them and provide recommendations with 2 other team members on how they could overcome some of their budget challenges. And I've recently applied for ICMA credentialing. I know that was a question that you asked when I went through this process a couple years ago. I did get approval from ICMA to submit an application, and I'm just awaiting status to become a credentialed manager. Service to the profession is something that's really important to me. Currently, I serve as one of 21 board members on the ICMA Executive Board, and ICMA stands for the International City County Management Association. I'm one of 3 regional vice presidents for the Mountain Plains area. We consist of 14 states. This is a worldwide organization. I'm one of 5 women serving on this board. I'm one of the youngest members of this board. Board service typically comes in the twilight years, and so one of the things that I'm really championing as a board member is finding ways to increase board diversity at the ICMA board level, really engaging the states in best practices and reaching out to the emerging profession. There's issues with the leadership pipeline in terms of students going in to degrees, whether it's political science, public administration, and then choosing to go elsewhere. They're choosing to go to law school, they're choosing to go to nonprofit work. We need more young, bright students to choose local government, and so I'm very committed to that effort. I am also a co-founding member of Colorado Women Leading Government. 13%, hashtag 13%, is about the fact that this is a little bit higher for Colorado, but from a national perspective, only 13% of chief executive officers in local government are female. And so this is something that I'm really passionate about in terms of really inspiring, encouraging, and motivating women to take that step into the CEO role. I also created the Trailblazer Award that's been given 3 times in the state of Colorado to different individuals who have made significant contributions to increasing diversity and inclusivity in their organizations. So a little bit about me, and I'm naturally introverted, so I'm kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and sharing some things about me. I was born in Rochester, New York. I grew up in Aurora, Colorado. My parents made an awesome decision to move to Colorado when I was 2. I thank them for that. I'm a graduate of Aurora Public Schools. I'm a middle child. I have an older brother, younger sister. I have favorite aunt status. I'm single. I don't have any kids. But I love to spoil them immensely. And then I have several godchildren, and I sponsor 4 children in various third world countries around the globe. And these are my siblings and their families and my nieces and nephews. So when I play, I love to golf. I took up golf 4 years ago. It's one of the most humbling sports I've ever played. Played basketball in high school, and let me tell you, every time golf gets you. I love to do Pure Barre. I love to hike, read, travel the world, spend a weekend binging a Netflix series if there's a new one out there, and then running. I also like to have fun, and I've mentioned this in my interviews with the department leadership team as well as city council. I think having fun is really important to building a great team. And so for the past several Halloweens at the city of Wheat Ridge, we've had department costume contests. And basically my executive assistant has said, you're going to wear this costume, and I get that costume and I wear it. So I've been everything from Thing 1 to Glenda the Good Witch. I've also dressed up as a carrot, sumo wrestler, costume to help promote our employee wellness program, because I think we spend a lot of time in the office and sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. And so I think it's important to show that as a leader, you're comfortable having fun, and I think that's a good way to engage your staff. So with that, my commitment to the city of Northglenn as your next city manager is to lead, manage, and empower this organization. I think I'm the right person for the job, and I also think that I will be the best city manager that's served this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate the end where you told us a little bit about you personally, because that humanizes you a little bit for all of us. I think I like that part. So anyway, I guess we are moving into some informal Q&A.
Do you want a question for you? The ones you emailed me?
Yeah, Corey has copies if people
you
don't.
do have copies? I was going to.
He does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. You saw I didn't have my glasses.
No, AK, Corey, no. I was like, calling him, I was like, God, I'm in the office. He's like, oh, print you copy.
Appreciate it.
Oh,
Here we go.
way to be prepared.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of him.
Did you print these?
So I think I'm just going to start with you. You get to go first, 'cause you're across from me.
So Heather, how will you be able to tell if a director is struggling and suggest alternatives rather than simply agreeing to their approach?
I have a very flexible communication style. I like to ask a lot of questions, not only from a perspective if I don't know something, but I'm also very intuitive, so I can typically sense if there's something that's not quite right. I think after you've managed people for many years and you've managed multiple varying personalities, you just tend to know if something's not right. So I am a very direct communicator, and I will ask. And I can say that I've had experiences where I've been told, oh, everything's great, everything's fine. And depending on the personality, sometimes the individual needs a day or two, and then they typically come back and say, no, I need your help with this. I offer my help in situations where I sense that there might be something that
in terms of assistance that's needed from me. But I always customize my communication style to the individual because I think that's the foundation for success. So I can tell you the way I communicate with my IT manager is very different than the way I communicated with my human resources manager. She was much more of a feeler. If you use Myers-Briggs terminology, she would take things more personally. So if we were in a meeting with executive management team and she was kind of getting beat up on, I would know that after that meeting that I needed to pull her aside and we need to have a debrief to help her reset and recharge and really process that information and make sure that she wasn't taking it so personally. With my IT manager, with my accounting manager, much different styles. So again, I can be very direct with those individuals. They'll say, I got it, everything's great. I think because I have an open door policy, I haven't had an issue where an employee hasn't felt comfortable to just come and talk to me. And that's true for employees throughout the city. They know that they can come and ask me a question, that I'm there to be a resource for them, and that's what I like to do.
So my question really has to do with the CIP projects, and the funding, because I'm very, very concerned. And I'm going to be really honest with you, because I am concerned because $100 million rolling up into these big projects, okay? So I'm wondering, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, okay?
It's okay.
But, thanks. How, and this is where I'm struggling, so I'm just being really honest with you. Your experience stops just short of the whole global picture of how the funding, the things like that. Can you just describe an experience in public works? You can do streets, maintenance, operations, construction, anything you want, where you had a large part in that process, where you had to secure funding, anything like that. It doesn't have to be CIP, but
So I'm going to give you a couple of different examples related to that. So as budget manager, and hopefully the title doesn't make you think that it's less in terms of the impact that I have in Wheat Ridge, because I play a significant role in managing the city budget. I work with one of our city engineers who is the lead on the Wadsworth widening project. And we're receiving significant federal funding on that project that's funneled through CDOT. So while I didn't write the grant application, I didn't go to the DRCOG meetings, I wasn't there advocating for the funding, I'm on the tail end of the process, which I think can be just as important as the front end of the process. And the reason I say that is because our engineer, he's responsible for submitting reimbursements on those for use of those grant funds. So we have an 80-20 contribution. So we get 80% reimbursed, and he will bill CDOT for the funds for the reimbursement, and then we wait, and we wait, and we wait. One of my roles has been consistently nudging him. We earlier this year finally got a reimbursement check of a significant amount that we had been waiting on for a good 6+ months from CDOT. If we had not received that check, our CIP is small enough that it would really throw it out of balance from a revenue and expenditure perspective. So today I was in a meeting with our community development director, our public works director, several of our engineers, our planning manager, and my role in that meeting today was to walk through our current CIP status. So we went line item by line item. Where are you at with grant funding? Where are you at with every project expenditure? They were actually supposed to come to the meeting more prepared than what they were, with estimates on particular projects. So we went through every minor street development projects. We went through preventative street maintenance. Every single project that's listed in our CIP, that totals about $7 million. From the 2E perspective, we went through those 4 key infrastructure projects: the Wadsworth widening, the Clear Creek Crossing project, the Ward Road Station project. So while I'm not the individual negotiating contracts, I'm not the individual making a lot of that action happen. I am the person managing the budget and making sure that everything's accounted for on the back end. Part of why I want to be a city manager is because I want to play more of a role. I've been around capital project management for the entire length of my career, and I'm ready to take on that role and to make those tough decisions. It's something I'm very comfortable with. Department directors really look to me, especially those who aren't comfortable with budgeting or don't like budgeting, to really help them. And so ultimately, when the proposed budget goes to City Council, that notebook, I've started from start to finish. We don't have a finance director at the City of Wheat Ridge. I'd love to have a finance director. So I spend a lot of evenings, I spend a lot of weekends making sure that every dollar from a program budgeting perspective, so from the back of the budget book all the way forward, everything's tied together. I have a strong finance background, and I think being able to understand the money is just as important as understanding the planning and the land use concepts. I think both are important, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to understand what you can afford and what you can't afford. And I've been fortunate to work under the mentorship of my boss, Patrick Goff, who I think I mentioned this in my first interview. He's great. He's one of the best city managers. He has high expectations, and I've learned a lot about budgeting from him. So I know that I'm completely capable of assuming the role of oversight over capital projects. I know that I am capable of asking the right questions when it comes to project management and not assuming that a department director has it covered. You've got to ask, because at the end of the day, it's your responsibility as city manager. One of the things that I do in my role as administrative services director, and it came up in discussion with the meeting I was in today, is where are we at with certain projects? There's a community grant for Activate 38. Are they going to be coming forward to the city and asking us for some type of funding to help do capital construction of sidewalks? That was me in that meeting asking, okay, which of the engineers is the lead with the community on that project? And the question was, well, I don't know. So we need to figure out where we're at with this, because we're going to get questions from council. So one of the roles that I play is asking questions that I know that my city manager is going to want to know if he was sitting in that meeting. And I'm completely comfortable doing that based on the rapport and the credibility that I've created within the organization. So I am completely comfortable assuming the leadership role that would be expected of the city manager here at Northglenn.
That's a great answer, but I do have one question for you. Knowing that you were going to have to tie all that together for all the meetings and meeting with everybody else, why didn't you go to any of the pre-meetings with Dr. Cog or be involved in any of the discussions before it came to your city?
It wasn't required of me. It's not part of my role as administrative services director. So we have a public works director, we have a community development director, we have a lead planner, a planning manager, we have engineers. Those were the individuals. So I wasn't invited to attend those meetings. Had I been, I would have happily attended those meetings, but that wasn't my responsibility.
Okay.
So that's where it comes down to organizational structure, and we're just structured in a way that's not my area of oversight. But when it comes to budget and overall management of revenues and expenditures, that's my core responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, Heather, thank you for spending your time with us and coming back to the city. Great city of Northglenn, as I like to say. But I think there's three things you touched on with this lead, manage, and empower, and I think that's really exciting for the times we are in the city and what we're looking to do for the years to come. My question starts with, based off the inherent disruption caused by the departure of the previous city manager, what specific ideas do you have to help staff transition to your style of leadership, but also gain their confidence and respect? I think that that's something that I know that I fear is just with bringing in a new leader and just how our senior staff is going to be able to work with you and how you plan to manage that transition moment.
I think generally speaking, as a new city manager, you ask a lot of questions and you do a lot of listening. You have a fabulous staff here. I felt like it was really important for me to meet with department directors one-on-one in person last week, and I'm glad that I took that step to do that because I think it provided the opportunity for several of them to have very frank and honest conversations with me. So I know that there is some concern by some of the department directors about what the transition looks like. I know that the transition, and this is true for past transitions, that there's certain department directors that have stepped up and really filled gaps in the organization. You have a lean organization and you have departments that are working really hard. I think it's important coming in as a city manager to make sure that you're accessible, that you're visible, and that you acknowledge and you recognize employees. I talked to several directors, and one of the directors stands out in my mind, who I won't name, but I asked this director, why are you still here? Given everything that you've just shared with me, why are you still at Northglenn? And the individual responded with, because I have hope, because I believe in what I'm doing. And I think all of us can relate to that we go into public service because we want to make a difference. And so my role as city manager is not to micromanage departments. We have key individuals in leadership positions that know how to manage, they know how to lead, and my job is to support them and help them in this organization. I don't like to be micromanaged. So I would not, it's a bad word in my vocabulary. So I think, really being able to have honest and frank conversations and really building rapport with employees is important. Making it a safe space to come into my office. And I said this to a couple of directors, you can tell me if you have a problem with a decision that I made. We can talk openly. There's going to be times of conflict. That's a given. But what I don't want to have happen is to have an employee withhold information or not share a perspective for whatever reason. I do what I can do to really create an environment for open dialogue because I think that part of being a city manager is not about having all the answers. Part of being a leader in general is about not having all the answers. You surround yourself with talented people who know their respective industries and so and disciplines. And so I think part of what attracts me to coming to Northglenn is you have a really talented staff. And if you didn't have that I probably wouldn't be sitting in this chair with the desire to come here.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask you, so as you mentioned during your presentation, the city's been without a public works director for a number of months now. And we can't hire, well, we're hoping not to hire until we've got somebody in place, a city manager in place. If you were hired, can you tell me about what that process would look like? You mentioned a little bit in terms of reviewing the job description and making sure that everything is in there. And I appreciate that. Maybe a little bit of a deeper dive in terms of some of the qualities that you would look for in the next director of public works and some of the things that you think are really important that this person have coming to the city.
Absolutely. A couple thoughts to share. It's a key position to fill, and given this transition that the organization is in, and with Rob Weber being acting city manager, that's a piece of the puzzle that I'll need to figure out. That I'll just set aside for this evening. Northglenn is a very attractive place to work. And so I think getting the job description out and really pushing it through various networks is really important, and that can be done pretty quickly. I have various contacts that I know I can push the job description out. So in terms of the actual hiring process, one of the things that I noticed in talking with directors is I think there's opportunity for greater collaboration in the hiring process. And so from my perspective, I would use this Public Works Director position as one of the starting points in doing this. So I like to have cross-functional teams when I recruit and hire new employees to the city of Wheat Ridge. So one of the things would be you really look at the organization and see, okay, when you hire a Public Works Director, from my perspective, that doesn't mean that you just have Public Works employees involved in the hiring panel. You have cross-functional panels. You have a Parks and Recreation Director that is very collaborative with the Public Works Director. You have a Community Development Director that's very collaborative with the Public Works Director. So those are two key positions that need to be involved in their hiring process. Additionally, I think you have key mid-managers throughout the organization that it would be advantageous to have involved in the process. The Public Works Director is a very visible position, and so I would be coming into this recruitment really looking for an individual that has a passion for public service, understands the demand, the workload that he or she would be walking into in this organization, that has the technical skills and abilities from a utilities, from a streets, from an overall project construction management perspective, as well as overall philosophy on customer service and performance management. What is their management philosophy? So I think I have really high expectations of what the ideal candidate is going to look like in terms of our next Public Works Director. But I think when you organize cross-functional teams, you get different opinions. And so you also, because it's such a visible position, you also get buy-in across the organization. So you don't have that dynamic of, oh, who did they hire in Public Works? It's, oh yeah, we're getting this individual and he or she is awesome and we're excited to bring this person on board. I think I mentioned in my first interview the opportunity to do something with a community panel of different representatives throughout the community is important, because we really need an individual that is a great communicator, that can stand up at public meetings and talk about different projects in a way that you can really relate to the average citizen without getting so technical in terms of the lingo that we often use when we're sitting in a conference room talking about certain projects. And so I think there's an opportunity there to engage some key community members in helping us really vet who the best candidate for that position is. I believe in robust hiring processes, and again, I truly believe that Northglenn is in a place where this position is going to be a very attractive opportunity for a professional that's looking to make a change in his or her career and make a move to the city of Northglenn.
Thank you for being here tonight.
You're
and
welcome.
Spending so much time with us. I really appreciate the efforts you've made to get to know our city and our staff. My question for you is, can you provide examples of how Northglenn can be an innovative city? And then would you consider yourself a visionary?
I do consider myself a visionary. I think that stems from the fact that I'm a local government nerd, as I've shared. So when I travel, I like to look at places and spaces in other communities and then really soak in what they're doing, whether that's a piece of public art, whether or not that's a trash receptacle, and it's a really nice trash receptacle. That's just who I am. At the City of Wheat Ridge, we've taken a step forward in creation of an innovation committee. And with the departure of my assistant to the city manager, I just met with them today, as a matter of fact. And so innovation, when you talk about innovation, it can mean a lot of different things. And so it's important for an organization, if you go down that road of really formalizing a committee or a team of employees, that you define what innovation looks like for the organization. I had the opportunity last summer to speak to a graduate program, and I'm smiling because I was sitting alongside the city manager, James Keene, of Palo Alto, California. And when you're in the room with a city manager of his caliber and you know the innovative, awesome things that they do in Palo Alto, California, it's easy to sit back and say, well, what do I have to offer in terms of what Wheat Ridge has done? Well, I had a lot to offer in terms of the discussion. The size and the scale, it's different. But that's what's great about local government is you share best practices. And so innovation, to me, isn't so much about formalizing it, but expecting it. And when I talk about moving the needle and creating strategic change, sometimes innovation stems from improving a process, streamlining and efficiency. It could be a program. I think if you focus on some sort of shiny, bright innovation, you're missing the whole point of innovation altogether. And so I think that innovation is something that's important to me. What it looks like here at the city of Northglenn, I think would be something to look at. I think you guys have so much going on that you're doing a lot of it anyways already. When you look at the Justice Center and the architecture of the facility, when you look at when Chief May walked me through different areas, for example, something that comes to mind is the farm doors in the admin on the area of the second floor. Well, the other doors wouldn't open. There wasn't the right clearance, so they did farm doors. That's a great idea, great solution to that issue without having to reconfigure a workspace. So innovation is really important to me. I think that's why it's important to have professional development and training opportunities so staff, they get out and they learn from their peers. I also think it's important, and this is something I haven't touched on, given the significant contributions that Northglenn has made and what's happening, is that Northglenn is telling the story about what's happening here. So case studies are submitted by staff through me. I'm encouraging them to write articles, whether it's a public works publication, whether it's a communicator's publication. The work being done with the marketing logo and the overall brand, there's lessons to be learned from the city of Northglenn. Submitting projects from Northglenn for awards, whether it's a CML award or their national awards through the respective trade associations.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
I do have a question. I was wondering, do you have any experience in labor negotiations? And have you actively negotiated any contracts?
Labor contracts or just contracts in general?
No, labor.
We do, okay.
But you can speak to both.
Okay. We do not have collective bargaining at the city of Wheat Ridge. So there's no labor contract that I'm currently or have been involved with. Several years ago, prior to me coming to the city and even my boss coming to the city, there was what you would call a blue flu and a potential move towards collective bargaining and the police department becoming a union. We have been fortunate to not have that issue come up, and I think one of the reasons we have been fortunate in that respect is because I've worked so closely with our chief of police, Dan Brennan, and our city manager to make sure that we're competitive with our compensation plan for sworn officers. I've talked a little bit with Chief May about what we've done at the city of Wheat Ridge, but we did a whole compensation revamp about 5 years ago, and that system has really worked for us. The challenge that we've had is the market in the Denver metro area is so competitive right now, and there's a lot happening in the policing field in general with what we see on the news on a daily basis, that it's hard to attract individuals to the law enforcement field. That we've started doing an annual review of the market with our compensation system for police. From just a general contractual perspective, I oversee the purchasing and contracting division of the city of Wheat Ridge, and so all contracts for the city come through my purchasing agent. Some of those require review by our city attorney. Some of them are more in a templated form. I have a great purchasing agent, and so she seeks out my assistant when she needs it. But I don't review every single contract, but I do review contracts, and I'm very comfortable with negotiating contracts with vendors or different individuals, whatever the circumstances. Sure. Hi.
Thank you so much. I was so impressed with the homework that you did for this second round. The presentation was solid, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you. It was fun. I enjoyed doing it.
Can I get off that easy?
No. Ask a question. Look at all those questions you have to choose from.
Thank you, Heather, for agreeing to come back.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. If you are selected as a city manager with less than a unanimous vote, how would you engage members of the council that may not have voted for you?
It's a great question, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. I'm excited, if offered this position, to take this next step in my career. It's been a dream of mine for over 20 years to become a city manager, and here I am in this position of it potentially happening. I'll say I'll be disappointed if I don't have unanimous support, but I think that's only human to say that. I think that I would look at a vote that's not unanimous as a signal that, that there's a question about my skills and qualifications. And so I have to work hard to prove myself. And that's what I would do. I would come into the position just like I would do with those of you who did vote for me to approve a contract. I would treat everyone equal, and I would work really hard from a communication standpoint to really prove myself, because I have a very strong work ethic. That's something that I was taught at a very young age, and that's important to me. And so it's important in coming to the city of Northglenn that I demonstrate that and that I prove my value to this organization and to the community as a whole.
So my question is about urban renewal. So you know that we have the Northglenn Urban Renewal Authority here in Northglenn, redeveloping all of our old shopping centers and areas that need redevelopment, obviously. So what is the equivalent in Wheat Ridge, and what is your experience dealing with redevelopment?
Sure. The equivalent is Renewal Wheat Ridge. They're an urban renewal authority. Our executive director is Patrick Goff, our city manager, and our economic development, actually I think it's Steve Art, I'm sorry. Is that right, Corey? Corey is our urban renewal authority, or city attorney.
Where doesn't he work?
It used to be Patrick, and now it's Steve, our economic development manager. My apologies. So Steve and Patrick, and then the community development director, Ken Johnstone, who's involved in more of the land use planning side, but Steve and Patrick do the forward-facing negotiation, meeting with developers, businesses, whether it's an SDEP agreement, TIF, whatever that economic development tool is that's being used to make that happen. Again, I'm currently involved on the backside of it from a budgeting perspective. I really help Steve manage his budget because numbers don't necessarily come naturally to him, and he doesn't like to have to put it in the format that I tell him he has to put it in. So we joke about that each time the budget cycle comes around. So that's my involvement. I've also been involved from a promotion and communications perspective. I came to the city of Wheat Ridge at a time when I took the job, and I would tell people, I'm going to the city. I got this job at the city of Wheat Ridge. I'm going to Wheat Ridge. And they would look at me and they'd say, Westminster? And I say, no, I just said Wheat Ridge, the city of Wheat Ridge. And they're like, Westminster? Like, no, we're the other W to the southwest. And Wheat Ridge wasn't as well known at that time. We were a very isolated bedroom community that was somewhat anti-development. And so I think that even though I've been on the periphery of a lot of the economic development efforts, a primary role that I've been able to play is to help promote and market the city. For several years, I was the city public information officer, along with being the assistant to the city manager. And then when I became a director, I still kept that PIO hat. Then we were able to hire a communications manager. So some of the things that we did that I was directly involved in was hiring a private public relations firm to really help rebuild our image with the regional and local media and to get stories out about the different urban renewal efforts. There have been some very political urban renewal related issues in the city of Wheat Ridge that I think many of you are familiar with. In particular from a couple years ago with the neighborhood Walmart development, which transformed into a different development. So some of the other efforts that I've played a role in is making sure that we celebrate and recognize the successes. So whether it's from groundbreaking to a ribbon cutting, making sure those key projects get attention. So again, I haven't been at the negotiating table, but I've been close enough in terms of working with my boss that I'm excited about the opportunity to take that challenge on, and I'm ready for it. And so really excited about what's happening in the city of Northglenn, and I know there's a lot of work to do, but I think part of the mindset that I bring to this role is the importance of collaboration, leveraging partnerships, because that's key to the financial aspects. There's significant infrastructure investments that need to be made in key projects such as Carl's Farm and even the marketplace. And then when you're talking about the civic campus, I reviewed the civic campus document this weekend and have some different thoughts and questions, which I talked a little bit with Debbie about last week in terms of that overall 10-year horizon. My initial impression is I think it's a little conservative given what the market's doing today. But I'm excited at the opportunity to engage at this level in urban renewal. Yes.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and I'm going to share a little background on the situation and then kind of ask how you would handle it. Over my time here on council, I've been through a handful of city managers, and one of the things that maybe we haven't seen so much in the last maybe 5 or 6 months has been their important role in handling negotiations, being involved in litigation side of things, in particular around public works. One situation that comes to mind is a scenario that we had with one of our neighboring partners. And I do want to just say that I got Corey's okay to say
As I'm reading through it, going, she's going off script.
Well, it's a follow-up, but with one of our neighboring communities that was required a real deep understanding of regulations, requirements around wastewater. Some of the public works, we leaned very heavily at the time on our public works individual, and there were just a lot of intense meetings negotiating with our neighbors. I think one of the things that was beneficial in that scenario is that we had that expertise in the city manager at the time to really pull us through that and be a part of it with our staff. So knowing that we don't have the public works director that has that experience, and then bringing in a city manager that may not have that experience, and potential for those things to pop up again, can you tell me how you would handle this scenario where you have to have a strong seat at the table in that negotiation, not backing down from the other communities that might be kind of aware of that lack of expertise, and how you would handle that both with your new staff and making sure that you're up to speed on that?
Great question. I think first and foremost, one of my roles as city manager would be to protect this organization from potential liability. So I think in the work that we do, in me working alongside directors, I'm going to want to know if there's areas for potential liability, and that's when I would have discussions with Corey and others in the organization to either alleviate or minimize any potential liabilities for the organization, and then when it would be appropriate to bring those issues, if it is an issue, to council's attention. I think to a certain degree it's part of doing business. I would hope that other entities, neighboring communities, wouldn't look at my lack of expertise in public works arena as an opportunity to take advantage of the city of Northglenn. To say it very directly, I think that I'm a great regional collaborator, and I know that from my experience in risk management, at the end of the day, you have to do the right thing. So if we're moving down a path to speak hypothetically about something, and we know the path we're headed down, there's a potential for the city to be sued, that might be a risk we're willing to take, might be the right thing to do. There's going to be situations where we're going to get sued, and we weren't at fault, we didn't do anything wrong, but we have to work through those situations, and that's when it's my responsibility to make sure we're working with our insurance carrier CIRSA, working with Corey to make sure the right people are at the table advising and strategizing to make sure we're doing what we need to do to protect the city. So I think, I've been involved in a variety of situations, whether it be from internal investigations related to personnel issues, related to policing situations where the city's been sued, to more of your minor property casualty, workers' comp issues. So I think that again, going back to what a great leader does, you surround yourself with the people that know. Have that expertise. So I'm very comfortable as a leader to be able to say, I don't know the answer to this. I don't have this experience, but I know people that do have the answers, and I'll work with them to make sure we're in a position to do the right thing.
Now I'm going to take another course.
Okay.
We have a very interesting mix as a city council right now, to say the least. I think we can all agree on that. My question to you is prioritization of city council members' requests. And how have you had to do that with in your role that you have now? I'd like to know a little bit about your prioritization and where you prefer to take direction from. Okay?
Sure. So one of the things that I didn't mention in my earlier presentation is Wheat Ridge has an elected city clerk and an elected city treasurer. So that's also part of the reason why we don't have a finance director at the city. So I work with our city treasurer on a regular basis, sometimes daily, a couple times a week, depending on what priorities he has. To give you an example, last week, he called me. He's a teacher at Wheat Ridge High School, and so he called me. And this is pretty typical in terms of our collaboration. He'll call me or email me and say, "Hey, I need more information about this. And my style, and this is true for anybody that I'm communicating with, is if I'm tied up and I can't get a response to you, if I'm in a meeting, I'm able to say, hey, I'm in a meeting, I'll respond to you in an hour, or I'll get back to you in 2 hours. I'll do that so that you know that that I received your request. If I'm on vacation, that might be a little bit different, but there's always going to be somebody who's here that's able to respond to requests and keep the organization moving forward. With the city treasurer, sometimes we don't always agree on things that he wants to do, or I may have to explain operational procedures that he's not maybe so in tune with. But I think part of what I do is I talk things through with him. So I explained to him when he became city treasurer, and an example is he wanted to get rid of the city lockbox. So businesses remit their sales tax via a lockbox, and he's like, I just want to do online remittance, mandatory online remittance, and get rid of the lockbox. Well, that's not that easy to do with the flip of a switch. That's a good idea, and I told him that, but it's something that we have to work towards. He was looking at it from the perspective that we could save a good chunk of change out of the sales tax program budget, but we also have a lot of mom and pop businesses in Wheat Ridge that hand walk their sales tax into us on a monthly basis. So some of what we've been doing is really he's talking throughout the community and getting a feel of, okay, is this really realistic to do? And we haven't gone down that road yet. So part of, I think, my role as a leader is to be direct and realistic with what are the potential impacts with his idea. And I know I've kind of gone in a bit of a different direction in answering your question, but to go back to the core of it, it's to be responsive, to let him know that I acknowledge it, set aside time to talk with him about the request. As a director, I manage. That one's a little harder.
Yeah, just a tad.
Say it again. What is the secret to managing and communicating conflict with you? So if I don't make Becky's priority the top priority and there's conflict.
No, we wouldn't have a conflict. Consistent information to every single person on council that does not change from person to person to for self-serving purposes. There, I said it. So that we are consistent, that we all know about things, because there are times when we end up on the dais and some of us look at each other and go, wow, did we really know that? How did we know that? Yeah. The information is not shared consistently a lot of times with the entire group of council. I think that just because there's an issue, say, in Ward 1, it may actually affect Ward 2, but we don't know. I don't know that Jordan's already working on Ward 1, on the same thing for Ward 1.
Okay.
So I don't think we have. It's something that has bothered me for, a long time. But consistent communication.
Marcy, you agree? I was going to say communication, but I think it's something that we all can work towards, me included. But I think the big part is not letting it, trying to be delicate, not letting it sit to the side, and I think we just need to take it on head on. I think it's probably where we've gotten ourselves into circumstances. Anyone else?
Something that your plan spoke to for me was something that I think we brought up maybe at our retreat, I think was anchoring to values. And so as that being one of your first steps, I really appreciate that, because I think that will help all of us if we have really clear values and goals. And then all of our conflict, whether, if we have debatable, things like I want this and you want this, where do they fit? Where do they fit in who we are? And I know that's been something I've been struggling with since I came on is who are we? What do we want? What are our values? Kind of that, do we collectively know, or are we 9 people with all different visions of that. And so if we can get a really clear vision and values and goals all lined up, then I think that would help some of those conflict pieces.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I'll just add that, I think some amount of conflict and debate, especially on the city council, is actually really healthy. I think that none of us were elected to come and agree with every decision that's being made. And so I think all of us owning the fact that we each have our own individual perspective, and that, these disagreements or conflicts that we may have don't have to be personal, right? And that, I may disagree with Antonio on something, but that doesn't mean I don't care. So I think kind of identifying what our spirit of conflict is, and acknowledging that we all still care at the end. Yes,
Okay. Next question. What do you think is the greatest threat to Northglenn today?
Let's let Antonio go first, so he can steal it, so we don't, he has an answer to give.
I'm sorry.
We'll let Julie go. She raised her hand.
I raised my hand, so I'll go first. I'll throw myself out there. I think the greatest threat to Northglenn, in my perspective, I see two things. I see one, and I think goes back to what Meredith was saying, is losing our vision and losing track of where we want to go, and not having, I guess, a clear idea of our path forward. I think we could definitely get lost in that. And then I guess another great threat in my perspective, again, speaking for myself, would be losing track of, or not taking care of our assets. So our staff, especially things like the safety of our community is essential, our infrastructure, some of those basic building blocks that make us a city. I think it's important that we continue to prioritize those and not just kind of, get too carried away. So I think we just need to make sure that, what makes us who we are is taken care of.
I think another one is our businesses. It's a threat in the sense that we kind of grow these really successful small businesses that then outgrow us and have to move out of the city because they need larger spaces. So being landlocked is a challenge for us. Our industrial area, we have some really amazing success stories over there. But unfortunately, other cities get to carry the torch with them because they don't have enough space, and there's no way to accommodate that. I don't have an answer as to what that is, but I think it's really tough to keep those businesses here. And then also businesses look to the city to move here. We're in a great location, but then we don't have the space for them to move here either. So I think it's a kind of double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And I think the other communities that unfortunately have been snagging some of our great stores and locations, that's just a continued threat unless we stop the bleeding.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I wouldn't necessarily say maybe the greatest threat, but a threat I feel is affordable housing in general, the cost to live in the city, and to make sure that we can keep our residents in place, aging in place as well. But also transportation and mobility, and making sure that we have a light rail system that comes through and it actually comes into fruition, that we're able to utilize and make sure that our residents have that option. So yeah, there's two of my threats. And I know you spoke. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go. The homeless population as well. And I think that when looking at the panhandling that is occurring on our streets and maybe an increase in crime or however that looks, making sure that we have a regional approach to combat that, as you spoke to in your presentation.
Joyce, do you have anything? I agree with just about everything that they've said, but I think clear visioning and working together is very important, and I'm just kind of focused on the wastewater treatment plant and all the things we have to do right now. I think that is probably, in my mind, the most critical.
Okay. Can I go off of hers since you brought up my thing? I'm not going to give you a threat. I'm going to give you my fear. Okay, because I think it'll help you understand me and what my fears, what my fears are about big projects and things. My biggest fear is that we are going to become too cash-strapped to be able to support ourselves anymore. My fear is that, the easy solution to some people would be, oh, why don't you just join together with Thornton and then you're sharing water and you don't have to worry about our wastewater treatment plant. Then I look at a $32 million, drop in the bucket to bring that up to speed. And how much longer can we afford? I want Northglenn to be Northglenn. That is my fear, is that we're going to end up getting absorbed because we have some money, and we're spending a lot of money all at one time. And that's why that is my issue. I worry about Thornton and I worry about Westminster. And it's been an ongoing fear and, since probably 15, 20 years that we've been participating in the city. Whether it's rational or not, I can't tell you that part. But I want the city to be solvent so that we don't become Thornton West or Westminster East. And that's my fear. Those are the things that I'm worried about. That's why I don't sleep at night.
Well, rest assured, if I am selected to be your next city manager, those sorts of things will not happen. There will not be surprises. There's enough work that you can do, that we can do as a team when you have the right people in the right positions to plan. That ties back to the long-term financial plan, knowing what our obligations and commitments are. And, I mentioned a couple of the big pieces, but once you build a building, you have to maintain it. Once you construct a park, you've got to maintain it. And so going into every decision that staff puts forward to council and making sure you know what those costs look like beyond just the initial construction, and knowing what that long-term 10-year horizon looks like is really important, because those are significant investments of taxpayer money, and all of you need to be in a position to be able to explain and justify that to your residents and citizens. And so I think I hear you loud and clear, and
that's where I'm coming from. I think it's fair to for me to tell you that, because that is my fear, especially the wastewater, Go ahead.
So I just want to, and I'm going to bring this to an end here too, but I would like to comment on that, because my fear is a little bit like that. I don't worry about other cities taking us over. I don't think they want us. That's kind of what I think. But I think that my worry is always that we are addressing the infrastructure issues, but still implementing some new programs, because I think that's really difficult in Northglenn. There's just always been a culture of you've got to hunker down and take care, but you also have to grow, and it's finding that balance. For me, that's the most difficult thing. So anyway, thank you everybody for sharing. Heather, thank you so much for being here tonight and spending so much time. You did a ton of homework, I can tell by what you were talking about. So that is amazing. Thank you very much. And we hope to talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said at the beginning, I was honored to come back, to have the invitation extended to come back and talk with you all. I'm excited about the opportunity, and I think I'd make a great city manager for Northglenn. So I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, we are adjourned from this meeting. How's that?
Test.
City of Northglenn, Channel 8, keeping you informed of events in your community.
Welcome, everyone. I would like to call to order our July 9th regular City Council meeting. Joanna, would you call for?
Mayor Dodge.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Escobar.
Here.
Councilmember Sowers. Here. Councilmember Leidy.
Here.
Councilmember Downing. Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman.
Here.
Councilmember Duran Mullica.
Here.
Councilmember Wilford.
Here. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Rob, is there any response to citizen inquiry tonight?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Are there any agenda additions and deletions from the council? Okay, hearing none. We will move to our first item, which is an interview for the Youth Commission with Elizabeth Denichi. I think I recognize that last name. You have a big sister?
Yeah.
Looks just like her.
Hi, Elizabeth. So thank you for applying for the Youth Commission. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe some of the members from council will ask you some questions.
Okay. I'm Elizabeth. I'm 13, and I attend Holstrom Middle School.
That's it?
Sure.
Well, what would you like to be? What kind of clubs are you involved in? Those kind of questions, maybe?
I'm a part of World Affairs Challenge. I'm a part of Student Council, and I play soccer for fun, and I like to exercise in my free time. And I want to be in the government when I grow up.
Wow. Okay. How about questions from the council for Elizabeth? Meredith?
So you're joining really young, which is awesome. That means we get to keep you for a while, I hope. So, if you have up to 5 years on this commission, what are your hopes and dreams, and what would you like to contribute?
I hope we can make the community of Northglenn better and the youth as well.
Jen?
Thank you so much for applying. I'm really excited that you're here and getting involved at such a young age. What are you the most excited about when you think about joining the Youth Commission?
I'm excited to help the community and work with a team to help Northglenn and make it a better community in town.
Great. Thank you.
Jordan?
Thank you for applying, especially being at such a young age. I'll echo that as well. I should have started much younger than I did. With that said, what aspects of government do you want to go into later? You mentioned that's your ideal goal. Do you want to be a council member? Do you want to be the mayor, the president?
I'd want to be part of Senate or a higher representative.
Nice.
Some big aspirations. Anyone else? Julie?
What's your favorite Northglenn event, and how would you like to see it improve?
My favorite event is Safe Street Halloween because I like to see all of the community come together and celebrate a holiday, and I'd like to see it become more of a big event and have more people attend.
Anyone else?
Is it awesome to have more people attend? I think that's great, though. Can you tell me something you're passionate about?
I'm really passionate about the sport soccer and also working with friends and a community to work on a certain project.
Cool. Thank you.
So Elizabeth, I was reading your application and you suggested that you wanted to work on issues in the city. Can you tell me some of the issues you want to work on?
Some of the issues I'd like to focus on are drugs in the younger community and tobacco and smoking and those problems and things that can affect children at a young age.
And how would you do
We could work together with Youth Commission and hopefully work with some outer companies to help solve the problem.
Thank you.
I have one. So I see that you live in Westminster. So does Westminster have a youth council?
I believe they do. I'm not quite sure.
And why did you choose the Northglenn Youth Council?
I knew some of the members because of my older sister and felt more comfortable, and I just decided to join.
Well, thank you very much for choosing us. That's great. Well, we wish you luck. I'm sure you will be a great member, and we will see you come in front of us reporting on some great events that you guys do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right. Our next item is a presentation on Anything Libraries with Pam Smith. Welcome. Thank you. Hi, Pam. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Smith, Library Director with Anythink Libraries, and what I just passed out is some heavy-duty reading. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to give you an update about what Anythink is up to. This is our strategic plan. That is the 2018-2022 strategic plan that I'll talk to you just briefly about in a few minutes. I just want to let you know a little bit about what the library is up to, which is always exciting and innovative. In 2006, I don't know if you all remember, we were the poorest library in Colorado. And then, thank goodness to our community, when they voted to increase our funding, and then we were the second poorest library system in Colorado. And with that increase in funding, in some ways it was a little bit like winning the lottery. We built 4 new libraries and renovated 3 and reinvented what a library system could be for our Adams County community. I think many of you might have had exposure to what's happened over the past 10 years. Our Huron Street Library has increased from about 12,000 square feet to about 25,000 square feet. Tomorrow, they're actually launching in a new initiative that we're working with the Tri-County Health System. We're having on Tuesdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. a trial farm market, which I'm really excited to stop by and see. This is, as you know, we don't have farm markets, farmers markets in Adams County consistently that we can count on. And so this is a trial, and we're hoping that many of our WIC moms will come and have opportunities to have healthy vegetables and fruits to be able to purchase. But it's welcome. It's open to the entire community. The teen librarian at the Huron Street Library, Janae, who's now the manager, has worked consistently with the teens that come in after school, and they're always looking for interesting projects. They write poetry, they write music, they do performances. Janae took them to Comic-Con to help build self-esteem. We have 2 children's librarians there that are just wonderful doing children's programming in the summer. This year, we actually have a partnership with the Colorado State Parks. And for any of you who haven't signed up for summer reading, it's for anyone from birth to 100 years old or even older. And when you sign up, you'll get essentially like a little plastic card that's good for $3.50 towards admission to any state park. And tomorrow, as a matter of fact, we're having a party at Bar Lake, and we're having folks from the community from about 10 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. So this is just a couple of samplings of the kinds of things that the library does. We really believe that We are here to serve our community and to help our community be successful. Last year, our board of directors asked the administrative team to reinvent anything, and we spent the year listening to our community and trying to understand what's important in our community. We asked people, what do you love about Adams County? What's missing? And what can the library do to help you and your family and your community be successful? And the result is the shortened version of this very small strategic plan. We actually have a notebook full of information that people provided for us, but it's distilled into 3 big ideas. One is community. The library is the town center, the hub, that place where it's safe to be and a safe place to come and meet your neighbors, connect with your neighbors. The second one is culture. People ask us to provide more and more and more programs for our kids, especially the pre-literacy programs, the after-school programs. They ask for more programs for seniors as well. So we are already doing tremendous programs, and we're going to be working on providing even more. In addition to that, career, helping people with their careers, whether it's helping students explore what those ideas might be, or it might be supporting adults who might be doing career change, or people who are coming to the library who are applying for jobs and they don't have a computer at home, or want resume writing skills, those types of things. What does this mean to you all? We are, at this moment in time, as you know, Adams County is exploding in its population. And in order for our library system to be able to stay ahead of the curve and to continue to serve our community in the way that they deserve, our board is considering a ballot initiative in November to increase our mill levy by 2. And that would translate into about $4 a month for a homeowner with a home valued at $325,000 a year. In order for us to do this, we will need the support of our community. We've done extensive polling, and people, as you know, are a little bit stung when it comes to our tax increases. But one thing that they've said to us consistently is supporting our kids and supporting education and supporting the library is something that's very important to them. Do you all have any questions or advice for us? Julie?
So, thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
I was very excited to see this topic on the agenda because I grew up in Thornton. My home library was the one off 88th in Washington. My mom used to take me there back in the day when you'd save the card and the book and I'd take my little books home. So I've seen Adams County libraries just transform ever since I was a kid. And so I think the work that Anything has done has been absolutely amazing and transformative for our community. And just all of the amazing opportunities that you provide youth, as well as adults and kids, is absolutely amazing. So I feel like one of my only requests would be how, in the future, does Northglenn get to share some of that? Because I feel like there's a huge gap for us. I have 2 little ones. I love taking them to the library. I'm either trucking down to Huron or going to Wright Farms for, the kid events or whatever. They love either branch. So, but I would like something a little close to home. I would like to see Anything be part of our community too, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'd like to see what that looks like. I personally would appreciate, I think our residents would appreciate that type of initiative being brought forward and be receptive.
We are, I actually have to stop saying if, and I have to say when. Number one, when the board makes the decision in August to move forward with the ballot initiative, and when it passes in November. That would provide an additional funding for our library system of just under $10 million a year. And half of that would be allocated to increased collections, increased programs, and the ability to operate new libraries. The other half would go towards capital to build some additional libraries. And right now, we are talking to many people around the county. Reunion is one of the sites that we're working with. We're talking about possibly opening a new library. We've actually had a conversation with the city of Northglenn, and we'll continue to have those conversations. We're working with the city of Thornton as well. And so we've just established a site selection committee that will be exploring and doing research with the intention of making a decision no later than about a year from now. We can't actually make site selections before we have the commitment from our community. And so we are open to having conversations with you. I know that Commissioner Whitman is very interested in having an incubator in the city of Northglenn. And I think that that is something that we'd really love to have further conversations, because that's very much in line with our career initiative. But at this moment in time, we're really having thoughtful conversations with a number of folks in our community to make decisions so that we can serve all of our community to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I really admire the work that Anythink does. My mom is a retired librarian, and so I spent my childhood in libraries throughout Wyoming and on the East Coast. So I truly believe that they're an incredible and an important asset to our communities. And so I'm just curious, you all are doing all of this work to identify where your next location is going to be when the ballot initiative passes. Are there other ways that Northglenn can continue to be a partner to Anythink and continue to support your work now and in the future?
I think that we actually have a very good working relationship. Marcy Whitman attends all of our meetings and has been for about 5 years, I think, close to 5 years. And so we've got a good, I think, understanding of the city of Northglenn and the library. We've done initiatives together when we did the block parties a couple of years ago, and we had a wonderful block party in the park across the street. I actually went out and visited block parties with Marcy. She gave us some really good advice as to how to run block parties. As a matter of fact, you guys throw some pretty good ones in Northglenn. I think that to continue to have these conversations and to understand the needs is the best way to move forward. I think we participated with your food truck event that was just about a month ago, which was a huge success. And so I think there are always ways, and one of the things that is critical to our success is we can't do everything ourselves, just like you all can't do everything yourselves, is that partnership and relationships that we have with the experts in the community to be able to deliver the best services to serve our community. We have a really strong working relationship with the Northglenn STEM School, and we regularly have staff who participate in judging their PBLs. The students come over to the library all the time to get resources. And so I think when it comes to partnerships and relationships, we're here for the long haul. And we're one of those places that I think people know that they can depend on. Anything else?
Martha? Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the things that impressed me about your process with the strategic plan is how involved you made the community in that conversation and the discussion. was always impressed with how many people you managed to pull together and be able to get their input in the discussion. I definitely think sitting in on those conversations, it was clear that you took the input from the community and put it into the strategic plan. So I do want to commend you for that. And then surrounding yourself with amazing any thinkers, your staff is stellar, for sure.
Thanks, Marcy. We did have input from over 1,600 people. And one of the things that was really, one of the things that resonated with us is regardless of where people lived, regardless of people's educational background or their income, the things that were important to them is, and I know that you're aware of this, people really want to have a community where they live, where they feel safe, where they know their neighbor. They really want that sense of center, I think, is the best way to articulate it. They want those places where they can walk to the coffee shop and walk to the library, and they want places where they know that they're secure and safe, and the police are there for them. They want places that have culture. They want to not always have to drive downtown to downtown Denver for everything. They want to be able to have amenities in their own backyard as well. Their families are incredibly important to them and the success of their children. And for the library to provide pathways for the children's success is something that's really important to them. As our community begins to age, our seniors are looking for more and more opportunities close to home to be able to have classes. I actually just came from a Cheese 101 class at the Wright Farms Library that was being given by a company called Your Damn Gouda. So I didn't get to sample any of the cheese, but I learned just a little bit about what goes on and really what it entails making cheese and what makes a cheese, the difference between a cheese that might be at the beginning end of the cheese to one that's more ripe that sometimes Americans don't like as well. And so the library is the place where you can learn just about anything, and that's really what we're all about, is helping our community learn, connect, and be happy. So one of our outcomes is people are healthy, happy, safe, and smart, and we continue to work as hard as we can to make sure that that happens. Any other questions or advice?
No? Pam, I just think you'll have your work cut out for you going for a tax increase. And
I know that.
I think messaging is always important, so really letting people know what you're offering for the increase, that'll be really important to those people that have kind of lost touch with what libraries are all about and wonder, well, why should I approve this $2 million increase? I think that's going to be crucial.
You're absolutely
Not
right.
that you don't already know that. Thank you.
We know we have our work cut out for us, and thank you very much.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks. Good night.
Keep in touch with us and let us know what we can do for you.
You can count on that.
Okay. All right. Uh-oh. All right. We will move to public invited to be heard, limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements shall be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Is there anyone who would like to come forward for public invited to be heard? All right. Seeing no one, we will move to the Legislative Policy Committee update. Jason, that's not you. You were jumping. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do the aha movement on him. Okay, so is there a committee update? Nothing.
Nothing tonight,
Thank you.
no.
Nothing tonight? Okay. Okay, Jason, now we'll move to the financial.
I am fired up tonight. So, good
Oh,
evening,
my
Mayor,
goodness.
Council. This is our interim financial report through May. I'll start off with an update on our sales and use tax. We're going to report that that's up 2.8% year over year, or $195,000. We expected 2 to 2.5%, so 2.8 is a little ahead of what we had planned, so that's a positive. Last month I talked about kind of the ups and downs of the different tax areas within that. Food tax, you'll see is down 3%, or so that's food for home consumption. Sales tax specifically is up 3.5%, and then auto use is down just about 6%. I think that did rebound in the next month. Accommodations tax is up 22%. And then consumer use tax, so that's the investment of businesses in their shops, is down about 12%. So that all kind of balances out to a little over 2.5% for the year. In the general fund, year-to-date revenues are at $9.3 million. That's a 4% increase over the prior year. Large portion of that driven by property tax. And then general fund expenditures, those are at $9.1 million. That accounts for 35% of the annual appropriation. That's consistent to where we are typically through May. We're at 42% of the way through the year, but we don't spend our money perfectly evenly. Was there any questions? On page 3 of the report, we have each department broken down expenditure-wise. There was no anomalies really to report, but I can try to answer questions if you have any.
Questions from council?
All right. Moving right along. The Water and Wastewater Fund, total revenues through May were at $4.5 million and total expenditures of $4.1 million. Water fund revenues are up 6.3%. You'll see water usage revenues up in that blue box on page 4 at the bottom, 1.3%, and then the wastewater sewer charge is up just under 9%. Total expenditures, as I mentioned, a little under, or just a little over $4 million. That's down. Operation expenditures are consistent with budget year over year. And then that's driven by capital projects that we had significant ones last year, and those have rolled off this year. In the Stormwater Fund, total operating revenues are at $157,091, and stormwater expenditures are at $119,759. The revenues are up 2.2%, while expenditures are up 46%. That's just timing of some professional services agreements that we executed earlier this year. And then in the Sanitation Fund, total revenues are at $686,450, and total expenditures are at $470,324. Total revenues are down 2.3%. You'll see the recycling revenue, and that's impactful to a certain degree. It's down about $6,500 year over year. And then the trash charges specifically, we actually have an increase in special pickup calls compared to the prior year. So part of that is just the timing of the billings that have gone out for sanitation. So we didn't change rates or anything, and it's really not, it's down 2% on paper, but we'll catch up before the end of the year. On page 7, cash reserves. At the end of May, so this is what we have invested in our various investments and portfolios, is at $62.6 million, and that's up $6.5 million from $56.1 million the prior year. The Capital Projects Fund is their investments in cash are up $5 million, and that's been a planned strategy as we go forward with the Civic Campus implementation. So that's the largest increase of that $6.5 million year over year is the accumulation of cash in that fund in order to execute that future project.
Thank you for that. That was going to be one of my questions. It's like, wow, that's growing.
And then on page 10, the geographic codes. This for collections through April. You'll see kind of the changes year over year from all of our geographic areas. The marketplace is down slightly. Malley Center is down slightly. Here on Washington East and Hillcrest are all down pretty minimally. and when you look at it in the scheme of things, they're staying pretty even. We'll get an update tomorrow where we're at through May. And I think that those numbers are going to fluctuate just a little bit, and we'll turn some of that red into black. So I may add some multiple years to this. As I was looking at it, I think I might actually go back at least a year or two to kind of see a more of a trend. I looked at it today, I think no surprise the marketplace is trending down with tax collections. The Malley Center a little bit, but most of the others are have an upward trend. It might be small, but it's still moving positive locally. So, and then were there any questions on the capital projects or executed contracts that kind of wrap up the report?
Questions?
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're so easy on you.
Yeah, we are. Too easy on you. All right, we will move to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we have one public hearing tonight, and I have an opening statement to make. So this is, Joanne, you want to read the title first? I'm sorry.
A bill for a special ordinance rezoning from R3A conditional to planned unit development, certain real property at 11450 Community Center Drive in the city of Northglenn, County of Adams, State of Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the city of Northglenn.
Thank you. Okay, I will now open the public hearing on the application for the rezoning of the property located at 11450 Community Center Drive from R3A conditional to planned unit development. The Northglenn City Council has jurisdiction to conduct this hearing under the applicable provisions of its Home Rule Charter and Chapters 3 and 11 of the Northglenn Municipal Code. The procedure to be followed in this case will be as follows. City staff will give a brief outline of the nature of the application. The applicant may then present any evidence in support of the application. All persons opposed to the application shall then be entitled to present evidence. Any other interested persons shall be entitled to present public comment or evidence. The applicant may then present any rebuttal evidence. Council members may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, and the public who testify. All witnesses will be placed under oath by the city clerk and may be cross-examined by any party, counsel for any party, or the members of the city council. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the city council or to the form or substance of these proceedings? Hearing none, staff may give a brief outline. Is that you tonight, Alan?
Yes.
Okay, come on up.
Yep, I'll go right ahead. Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Alan Seeloff with the Department of Planning and Development. Tonight I'll be presenting on the reserve at Northglenn Apartments, the application to rezone to a planned unit development. It was case number Z-3-18. It was also presented at Planning Commission on June 19th. So the applicant is MS Northglenn Limited Partnership and Security Properties. They're the current owners of the property. The request is to rezone it from R3A multiple dwelling zone with conditions to planned unit development, and it's located at 11450 Community Center Drive. Notification was conducted in accordance with a zoning code procedure for a public hearing. So mail notice was sent to the nearest 35 properties. Publication of the meeting was posted to the Northglenn Thornton Sentinel, and then a public hearing notice sign was posted on the property. The site is located where the star is there on the map in the city. Zooming in, it's just down the street from us. It's at the northeast corner of Community Center Drive and Malley Drive. And a little bit on the site history for the reasoning for the rezoning tonight. It was originally zoned R3 multiple dwelling zone in 1983. Along with the property to the north where they built townhomes. The conditions were added to the site in 1986 where it was rezoned to R3A for more of a higher intensity multifamily dwelling, and then conditions were amended in 1992. The site wasn't actually constructed, or the current apartments weren't actually constructed until 2002. It's since been discovered that the current layout is not in perfect conformance with the the site plan that's referenced in the zoning conditions. So the 1986 zoning conditions were specific to an approved site plan. It's largely intact. It was more of kind of minor alterations of where the buildings were placed and a few things of that were, so the conditions are not technically in full conformance. It's also been discovered that the site plan violates a specific section of the zoning code that restricts or requires a certain building separation for buildings that are 3 stories or taller of at least 40 feet. 2 of the current buildings are only 9 feet apart, and there's a couple other buildings that are closer together than that. So the current site's technically in violation of the zoning code. Just to go over what's on site right now, so there's 10 existing 3-story apartment buildings, an office and an office and a pool, and then 5 garage structures. 220 total apartment units are there currently, 52 1-bedrooms, 132 2-bedrooms, and 36 3-bedrooms. The maximum height's just over 44 feet. There's currently 444 parking spaces, 71 of which are garage spaces. There's access provided off Community Center Drive and Malley Drive. 32% of the site is currently landscaped, and then there is a water drainage easement from the north through the eastern portion of the site. So just a few photos of the current apartment complex on the north, the existing buildings, and then, or on the top of the existing buildings, and then on the bottom are some of the garage structures that are proposed to be replaced with apartment buildings. So some of the adjacent zoning, there's a PUD multifamily development to the east and also to the northwest. Boondocks there to the southwest. Those original townhomes are just to the north, and then there's a church and then a single-family neighborhood to the south. So the current site and then the proposal for the site, in terms of compatibility with a comprehensive plan, it's identified as multifamily residential in the future. That's not proposed to change with the addition of the apartment units. And then the addition also supports some broad policy goals identified in Section 5 of the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan in that section discusses future residential development will likely be multifamily. This is in line with that, and then encourages reinvestment in existing housing stock. So along with the addition of apartment buildings, there'll be some maintenance and upkeep for the rest of the site as well. So here's the site plan. Outlined in blue are the 3 new proposed buildings. Those are over basically the same footprints of the existing garage. Detached garages on site now. So again, it's R3A with conditions currently. The PUD will remove those conditions, and the new PUD document will revert to be the regulating document for the property. So the 3 additional apartment buildings will add 50 units, and except with a couple of exceptions, the PUD is going to be consistent with the R3A zoning anyway. Those 2 exceptions are 10-foot side setbacks on the north and east of the property instead of a 20-foot rear setback. Despite that difference, the proposed buildings are still basically at 20 feet. It might be a couple of feet closer than that, but it's not extending over the existing parking lot area today. And then the other exception is the parking ratio. So it's proposed to be 1.7 rather than the current 2 parking spaces per apartment unit. So just to go into the parking a little bit more, so there's 444 current parking spaces for the 220 units. That's just about exactly 2 spaces per unit. The proposal without the PUD would require an additional 96 spaces in order for this to conform with the zoning code. Rather than add large swaths of additional surface parking, the applicant was interested in kind of alternative methods of providing a different look or a different take on what could be done with the site. They provided a parking study that included an on-site study of the existing parking. It found that the existing site was underutilized for parking. I think it was roughly a quarter of the existing parking spaces weren't being used. They studied neighboring jurisdictions for their parking requirements. And the average of those, I believe it was 7 different cities, averaged out to be about 1.7 spaces per unit. And then we also took a look at the proposal with some of the proposed language in the new zoning code. and it breaks it down based on bedroom, spaces per bedroom, visitor parking, and that came out to be right at about 1.7 as well. So that was right in line with that, and we wanted to hold them to the 1.7 ratio. The other aspect of the parking is compact spaces. In order to accommodate the 1.7 ratio, a number of spaces would still have to be added. So they proposed to reduce spaces from the current minimum of 8 feet 6 inches down to 8 feet, so a reduction in 6 inches in spaces for up to 65% of the total parking. So that'll bring up the total parking count along with the number of units being added to meet that 1.7 ratio. Here's the map of the compact parking. The green spaces are highlighted as being the proposed compact spaces, so they're distributed pretty evenly throughout the site. The blank spaces are the standard spaces, 8.5 or 9 feet, and then there's a number of garage spaces still. So the new apartments are being built will only be on the second and third floor. The bottom floor level will all be garage spaces or open parking. So a number of garage spaces are still available. Getting into the landscaping, they were only required to detail out the proposed redevelopment area, so that's why the shape is a little funny on here, but the overall site plan shows trees and landscaping area. Currently, that 32% landscaping is not going to be disturbed because they are building only in existing parking areas. They're not eating into the existing landscaping. A few of the trees will be removed, but they're replacing more than they're removing. And they're also removing some existing invasive species. Regarding architecture and elevations, they'll largely be mimicking the existing buildings on the site, pitched roofs, masonry elements, meeting requirements that way. Again, the new units will be on the second and third floors. Just to run through here, you'll see that the bottom floor here is where the garages are on some of the buildings, and then the back side of them will be over podiums and then open parking. And then same with the additional buildings.
Can you go back and say that one more time, Alan? I'm sorry, I couldn't.
So it'll be, let me get back here. So basically one half of the buildings on the east side will be covered parking, and then on the east side it'll be open parking with just podium supporting the building above it. So they won't be walled off. It'll be part of the regular parking spaces available to the residents.
Thank you.
And then just finally, some of the civil engineering considerations. Public Works reviewed studies on traffic, drainage, and utilities. There were no major issues on any of the three. The traffic's not expected to negatively impact the levels of service on the adjacent streets. The detention pond will be updated to accommodate additional flow for the disturbed area, but not necessarily for the whole site, but in line with existing regulations. And then utilities will be provided through the city's mains. No additional capacity is needed there. So the approval criteria is outlined in the staff report. It's actually part of the Planning Commission staff report. It's attachment 2. You can review that for the staff analysis. The council's options tonight are to approve the request with or without any conditions, deny the request for reasons stated, or table it for further consideration. Again, Planning Commission did review this case on June 19th. They voted unanimously to recommend approval to City Council tonight. So with that concludes my presentation. The applicant is here to speak on behalf of the project, answer any questions, or say a few words, and then I'll be available as well afterwards. Thank you.
While Alan's still here, are there any questions for Alan?
It's going to be a mix between
Wanna wait?
Alan and staff.
Okay. You are free.
Okay.
All right. Applicant can come forward and present evidence in support of the application. It has to be sworn in, too. I'm sorry.
Okay.
City clerk over here will do that for you.
So if you'll raise your right hand, please. Is the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I am Brian Fulbright with Security Properties. I'm a director in our affordable housing group and excited to present Reserve at Northglenn to you here tonight. Quick background, Security Properties, we have a 50-year history in affordable housing development and investment. It wasn't highlighted during this presentation, but Reserve of Northglenn is an existing affordable housing community, and as part of our business plan, we're going to continue that on for at least the next 15 or 20 plus years. We own and operate approximately 1,600 multifamily units in the Denver metro area from Northglenn down to Colorado Springs, and 1,200 of those are affordable housing. And we own a portfolio of approximately 8,000 affordable housing units across the United States. We've been working with staff now for approximately the last year in getting to this point, so we're excited for all the input that they've been able to share and help us present the Reserve of Northglenn to you. So again, highlighting Reserve of Northglenn, it's existing 220-unit property. It was built as affordable housing, and it's continued in that. So it serves individuals that are making 60% or less of the area median income. An example of that would be a family of four would income qualify. They'd have to make less than $54,000 a year to qualify to live there, and that changes based on the number of residents you have in your household. A couple things that Alan had highlighted in here that I wanted to make note of. The existing site plan, the deviations, we inherited that. We were not the original developer. So I think we brought light to those problems to city staff during some of our due diligence. And so that was part of the PUD process to correct that. And then just to confirm also the business plan with these new units is that we have to build up. There's no ground floor units. It's all parking on that first floor, either garage or tuck under. And all the new units are on the second and third floors of those buildings. It was the only way to meet the density requirements and be able to modify the parking structure was to allow for that. So with that, I was keeping my comments brief and excited to answer any of your questions.
All right, questions? I have a couple. Can you clarify, with it being a 2- and 3-story, your buildings are already a 3-story, right? So the height is going to equal the same, or are these going to be taller than the current buildings?
They're going to be roughly be the same. Most of the buildings on site are 3-story. There's a couple that are 2, and so all 3 of the new buildings will be 3 stories.
Okay.
So.
Are all 3 buildings going to go under construction at the same time?
Yeah, roughly. The construction period is 12 to 14 months.
I'm leading up to all these questions.
Yeah, no problem.
So you're building on top of garages, so I'm assuming you're going to make people not have stuff in their garage and not parking in the garage.
Correct.
And so you're going to have to find new homes for those vehicles.
Correct.
So I'm going to be honest that to hear that there's a reduction of parking in some ways is a problem for me, and here's why. A couple years ago, we had a presentation from your neighbors.
Carrick Bend.
Who came, nope, the other way. Who came forth and presented that they didn't need these spaces, and they convinced us they didn't need these spaces. So here's the problem I have. I hear from residents daily, not kidding, daily, forward them to the city manager because there are all of these cars now parked on Highline and Lincoln, from them now charging for the parking there and because they don't have enough parking spaces. So my question to you is, I guess I'm actually looking for a guarantee that if you don't have those parking spots, we can't be having this like overflow because we give you a reduction into those two communities that now get this grace period of it. So tell me how you think you're going to address that with your residents.
So first of all, I think the parking ratio, or the property you were referencing, was that Stone Mountain and Carrick Bend at the 1.5
No,
stall?
it's the one to the east of you.
Okay. I don't know their parking ratio offhand. Did you know?
We reduced it. We did a couple years ago.
I know when we presented to staff and working with coming up with the appropriate ratio, there was we'd started at 1.5. That's based on our study. Our traffic study that we did at the site, currently we're utilizing 1.6 cars per unit is on site, and we're at 2. So the majority of the time, the east side of the property in the northeast is vacant. Those stalls just aren't utilized at all. And in working with staff, they had brought up the issues of people parking on Highland and that overflow parking. We get overflow parking into our property from some of the from some of those properties. Our property manager informed me of. and I apologize, I'm jumping around on some of this.
I asked a lot of things.
Yeah. As far as charging, I guess I can answer that. Renting. So each unit, we have to provide parking as part of the tax credit program. There's certain rules on that. So every unit gets at least, I believe it's 1 for the 1 bedrooms and 2 for the 2 and 3s on site. The only optional fees are for the garages. Those are extra. And then if we'll have to manage the parking if a resident requests 3 cars or more, we would have to see availability if we can accommodate them in that. The demographics of our site are a little different probably than some of the others in there, given that we are low income. The majority of our residents are people in their 20s and 30s with multiple kind of younger children. I would assume in some of the market rate properties that are near us might be 2 or 3 individuals that are rooming together to be able to meet those rents. So they might have 2 or 3 cars or more per unit, whereas we're families that aren't going to have multiple cars, or maybe they're 1-car families in that regard. Did I answer all of your questions, or what have I forgotten?
My big concern is just that I just, I know street parking, it's not like we permit it or anything, but
Yeah.
I think that the challenge that our residents unfortunately face on Lincoln and Highline is there is no parking for themselves because it's occupied by the residents of the apartment complex, not yours, but that are parking over there to avoid their steep monthly fee of parking.
And another statement I want to make is that as part of the tax credit program, we're committed to these deals for long term. So it's not like we're going to build these and then sell in a year to somebody else you're going to deal with this. We're in this deal for at least 10 to 15 years. So you'll be able to come back at Security Properties and say, show the video.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcy's going to hold you to that. Just know that. Are there any other questions for Brian? Julie?
I have a quick question, and just to help me put this into context. So, what is the average rent for some of your units? And then for the new buildings, is that same criteria going to be applied to the new buildings as the same as the old?
Correct. So as part of the low-income housing tax credit program that CHAFA administrates, it's an IRS program, we sign a LURA land use regulatory agreement, and so it restricts what the rents are that we can charge. It's based on the area median income that's published. All of the rents are set by the number of bedrooms. So a 1-bedroom currently is $973, a 2 is $1,162, and a 3-bedroom is $1,338. And so that'll be consistent across the new and the existing units. Just because they're new, we can't and don't charge more.
Jenny?
Thank you. So I understand that you're adding 16 new individual units. How many of those are going to be 1-bedroom? How many are going to be 2, and how many are going to be 3?
It's 50 new units.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're just giving you 10 more, apparently.
4 will be 1-bedrooms, 26 are 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, and 20 will be 3 bedrooms, 2 bath.
Okay. Questions? No, ma'am. No? Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Brian.
Thank you.
Are there any other interested parties that would like to present public comment or evidence? All right. Seeing none, I'm assuming you don't want to present any rebuttal evidence because nobody rebutted you, correct? Yes. All right, council members, any other questions of staff, the applicant? Staff or? All right, none. All right, I would say that I am going to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. And we will move right into ordinance's second reading. Joanna, would you read the title? I know it's on the rezoning we just talked about, but just for the record. Thank you.
A bill for a special ordinance rezoning from R3A conditional to planned unit development, certain real property at 11450 Community Center Drive in the city of Northglenn, county of Adams, state of Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the city of Northglenn.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss at this point regarding public hearing we just talked about, or?
My name. Oh, no, it's okay. I guess the only thing I want to try and wrap my brain around is when we're going to be doing construction on the recreation center, the senior center, and the new theater, and when they're going to be doing construction, and what sort of impact that's going to have on residents who live along Community Center Drive. So I don't know if that's a staff question or more a flag of how are we going to manage all of those things, and are they an issue?
Alan, can you answer when the construction will begin on the reserve?
It's probably more up for you guys for discussion, but I don't imagine that it would affect Community Center Drive itself. It's internal to the site.
Do I need to stand up there?
Please.
Yes.
Sorry. Pending the approval tonight, the first long lead item for our start is the permit approval process. So right now we're kind of forecasting end of August or September. I have an update meeting tomorrow with my general contractor on that feasibility, but it's going to be in that kind of end of Q3, beginning of Q4 that we'd start. And then the construction duration is 12 to 14 months is what we planned. And I don't know if when your senior projects.
Depending, approvals of, building permits, the civil work on the site. So, depending on how responsive everything is with biddles and everything.
Yeah, and I guess I can't speak to what your scope of work is and the
Yeah,
traffic
you're way
on that.
ahead of us on that.
Okay.
And also where you're doing the construction on your property is it's kind of in the back corner there. It's on the east side, so I don't foresee too much of a problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other?
No, I was just going to echo Marcy's concerns about the parking and how that's going to work during the construction phase, because we already have so many complaints about parking in that area. That's probably one of my biggest concerns.
Take note on that. No, it's okay. I just wanted that you might have to address that later after you start construction. Okay. All right. So hearing no other questions, Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CB 1911 on second reading passes unanimously.
Thank you. We move to ordinances. First reading. Joanna, would you read the title for CB 1912?
A bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 12 of the Northglenn Municipal Code regarding the function of the Citizens Affairs Board.
To approve. Second. Rob, would you like to take this one?
I think it's probably more appropriate for Joanna.
Joanna's one? All right, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the proposed ordinance has been drafted to amend the municipal code to allow the council to authorize the Citizens Affairs Board to perform additional tasks as the council deems appropriate. The board's function is currently limited to receiving and considering complaints and proposals from residents regarding the city and its government. Over the last several years, the board has received very few complaints or proposals from residents outside of the board members themselves. So there have been some concerns about the board's effectiveness. The amendment will allow the board's function to be expanded, which will allow the board to assist with other projects or be utilized in other programs. The board's primary function of receiving and considering complaints and proposals will not change, and so the board will continue to serve as an advocate on behalf of the residents. We've heard from the voters, at least a couple times, that the majority of them want the board to remain. So it's important for us to preserve that original function of the board, but we also feel a strong desire to find other opportunities to increase the board's effectiveness and to really focus on making positive connections between the board and the residents, primarily by letting the residents know that the board even exists and that they are here as a resource to the community. So some examples of what other additional tasks might be. We kind of brainstormed maybe helping with an inclusivity committee if council decides to go forward with that project, serving on ad hoc committees where additional public input is required or wanted. And I know the board members could do that individually, but I think this is an opportunity that they could also do that as a board. And then they would also, it would be twofold. They would also be promoting the existence of the board to the community as well. And then participating in civic events or community projects as well. And that, in my mind, again, creates an opportunity to make those positive connections while also getting the city additional volunteers for these events, which I think is a great thing. the members of the CAB, or Citizens Affairs Board, have discussed the change, and they are in favor of the proposed amendment. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Okay. Questions from council? Jenny?
Thank you. Joanna, I'm curious, would it require a council resolution every single time we want to suggest that this commission take up a particular issue or a new responsibility? Or is it something that would simply require consensus?
I would say a consensus is all that would be required. The city attorney and I briefly discussed what that would look like in real life, based on what the additional task would be, and he didn't feel that it would need to be a formal action of the council. I think because this would be something that is obviously new, especially with this board, staff would definitely keep that communication open with council to provide opportunities to kind of create those boundaries, since this is territory we really haven't been in several years. But we don't anticipate needing any formal action.
My question, and I don't know if it's for who in this room, could be all of us, but would this also, is there a point in where we need to appoint somebody from council to sit with this board like we do for so many other of our groups? Because I don't believe there's any of us that currently sit on the Citizens Affairs Board and attend those meetings. So is that something that we would want to consider in the future?
There's a reason that's not, and that is because of the nature of the Citizens Affairs Board. It's created by charter to be a board that is specifically separate from council.
Oh, okay, so we don't need anybody to sit on.
Correct.
Any other questions?
I have one more, but I'll defer to Becky since she hasn't spoken yet.
I'm just curious, I'm sorry, and then I took it, didn't I? It's okay. I'm just curious, when you say to participate in other tasks, forces, or projects or things like that the council may have, I worry that we might be getting into some of the same positions we have with the rec center, right? When we did our reach out for the rec center, we got the same 12 people with the same 12 opinions again. So I'm wondering, are other people going to have options to participate in this? Is this going to be like our first go-to have the Citizens Board come on to a task or something? How do you envision that working? I don't want to leave out other residents because they're not part of this.
Yeah, we definitely wouldn't want the same. So it's a board of 5. What's nice about the Citizens Affairs Board is they're representative of the wards in the city. So there's 1 member per ward and then a member that serves at large. We definitely wouldn't want those 5 members to prohibit any other community members from participating on a task force or a committee. But I believe in certain cases they could, I've heard council say numerous times that you want more public input and more public input. And so in my mind, if there's an opportunity for the Citizens Affairs Board to participate, I think it allows them then that opportunity to go talk to their neighbors, the other people that live in their wards, and communicate messages about the project, solicit additional feedback if that works out. So I guess it depends on the project or the program. I think there's an opportunity for them to communicate the message even more for the city. So it may not be just providing input as an individual or as a board, but maybe taking a step further and being able to then take that information and share it further amongst the wards that they represent.
Julie, Jenny.
It's okay, thank you. I'm curious if we could add any sort of component where we ask the Citizens Affairs Advisory Board to come and report to us or around what they're doing, what their activities have been, how things are going, at least once, if not twice a year. I know that many of our other commissions, particularly the Youth Commission, comes to us quarterly, and so I'm wondering if this is a way of ensuring that we've got an open line of communication at all times and that we're able to constantly improve upon what activities this board is taking up so that we're using it the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, I think they should have the same opportunities everybody else does to come forward. Oh, now you're going to say
oh,
no?
Corey.
Okay. Okay.
So certainly the Citizens
No.
Affairs Board has the opportunity, but your charter specifically says the board should direct all inquiries and requests to the city manager. The way in which this board was created by the charter, it is intended to be sort of extra governmental. It's supposed to be a place where citizens can go and complain to this board. One of the membership requirements is that they be a part of no other board of the city. So certainly they can report back to you. But the way in which the entity is created by the charter makes it so that their function, their core function, is really to address problems of the citizenry. If you want them to report back to you on all these other things, all the other tasks you've given them, that is certainly appropriate.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking
Okay.
for. I mean,
Okay.
if we have to have dinner with them, let's have dinner with them.
Yeah.
But like, is there a way of creating that line of communication so that we're able to effectively address whether or not the tasks and the things that we're delegating are
Yes.
being done effectively? Okay.
Anyone else want to weigh in? And I kind of think it's good, and maybe they need to, okay, Corey, I guess I'll ask you first before saying they should. Can they actually go out into the community and hold a meeting? Because, just like us having a ward meeting, sometimes you get more people to come there instead of people coming here to a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes, although the line I think the city has struggled with over the years is they're supposed to be there to receive complaints. Are they supposed to be there to sort of motivate people to make complaints? And so and I don't know where that line is. There was a concern years ago that the Citizens Affairs Board was the only entity actually itself making the complaints as opposed to getting complaints from the citizenry. And for at least one of the times in which the question was presented to the electors, that was what the origin of that question. So I don't know where that line is.
Well, the nature of the board is to receive citizen complaints. So to me, whether you're receiving them at your meeting or you're receiving them out at a meeting, you're still eliciting the same response that you want. So,
And if I could, the current membership of the board, they're really not focused on receiving complaints. I know that's one half of their function, but the other half of that is proposals. And so that's the positive aspect that they really want to connect with the community about. They want to not necessarily go solicit complaints. I mean, if complaints happen to be what come about, then that is what it is. But they're really eager to make connections with the community, first to let people know that they're there. I've heard it from at least a couple of the new board members. They had no idea what the Citizens Affairs Board even was until they saw the question on the ballot. And so we really, staff and the board, want to make a real genuine effort to communicate that this board does exist. It's going to continue to exist for the near future, and really focus on not so much the negative aspect of complaints, but really making those connections with the community and getting those proposals, something that we can all work toward that might benefit the community. So.
Just a little bit. Everything Corey said was accurate, and with the CAB, they're there to receive, right now, they're there to receive any issues or complaints from the citizens, but they're not there to solve them. They're there to refer it to the city manager. And then the city manager does whatever he needs to do and gets back to them, and then they get back to the citizens. That's kind of how that whole thing works. In the past, we've used the Citizens Affairs Board to create the citizen survey. When Phil Korn was involved, he took that initiative up and he helped the city do that. And there's other little tasks we did, maybe they weren't supposed to do it, but they did help, because we've really never had a lot of activity at that board. So, just a little information for you guys.
Meredith?
Hi, Alice.
then? So the way that you just described it, we now have an app that does that.
Yeah.
So there's an app for that. I'm a little confused
Yes,
as
but
to why
it's
we
not in the charter.
we have an app that does that. And so
Yes.
as a citizen, if I can just go to the app and fill it out and have my concern addressed without having to figure out who my citizen affairs board person would be to talk to, I'm not going to use that. So is that something that we still need? I mean, if we leave it the way it is, I don't think it's necessary. If we're going to broaden their purpose, I think we need to define a little more specifically what the purpose is.
I'm going to try to answer that in this sense. I think part of the purpose for this ordinance is exactly what you described, that the original core function of the CAB may not be as relevant as it once was. And so with that, the city council has put on the ballot twice to eliminate it, and it's failed three times, I'm sorry, and it's failed all three times. So this is an attempt to take an existing board and perhaps give them additional tasks so that to the extent there is an app to address their core function, they can do these other functions. And I think the flexibility, the informality of, as council deems appropriate, is that maybe you don't know as you sit here tonight what those functions are that you may want to delegate to the CAB. But this gives you the flexibility that you have a board of volunteers that is made up of a cross-section of the wards of the city that you have to delegate functions that you just don't know what they may be today.
Is anyone here from that board to have, to speak to us about what they want? No?
I think Joanna gave as
Okay.
liaison.
I guess I would think that if these 5 members really were like, we still want to stay together and we still want to have a purpose, that they would.
Well, by charter though,
Yeah,
you
this
have
is
to
not-
maintain
Like,
this
they're
board.
here.
You
Well,
have to.
I know.
Yeah.
But if I'm one of those 5 people and this was being discussed tonight, I guess I would have
got
thought
it.
I would.
Got it.
Well, and if I can, this was mostly driven by staff, and that was in response to some comments from council. Those were the concerns about the board's effectiveness. So it wasn't initiated by the board itself. We presented the information to the board, and they were definitely in favor of it. They've also had information presented to them about the inclusivity committee possibilities, and they were very receptive to that. But quite honestly, we spoke to them about the amendment, but I did not invite them to attend to speak on behalf of the board, just because this was mostly a staff-initiated item in response to a council concern.
Okay. I guess a couple of things. One is our Ward 4 representative to the Citizens Affairs Board did come to our ward meeting on June 26th and introduced herself to let folks know who she was, and shared that they were going through this process of figuring out who they are and what they're doing. And so I can't speak for her or anybody else, but I think that, they are committed to figuring this out. I'm personally really excited that we're having this conversation because I think it opens up a lot of capacity. I'm very much with Meredith in terms of the complaint part, right? I don't want us to create more red tape and more sending residents around on a chase to figure out where their complaints go. I love that we've got the app, and I want it to be very clear that any resident who has an issue should talk to their council person. I mean, theoretically, that's exactly why we're here. But I love this ordinance because I think it really opens up the opportunity to figure out how we really get thoughtful insight and collaboration from a board such as this one. And then my question is, do we amend this when it comes up for second reading? If we want to add some sort of report back, come and have dinner with us, or come and tell us what you're up to and how things are going?
You certainly can.
Or does
I
it
think with
happen
your
tonight?
other boards and commissions, you can simply give the direction that you want to report back from them. You don't need it in the
Okay.
ordinance itself.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Well, and in the beginning, when they put this in the charter, what happened was there was a lot of citizens that did not want to address the council. They didn't want to come to a council meeting or even call a council person, you know, they just didn't want to do it. And so that was part of the reason why there was another avenue for these people to address their concerns without having to come to the city council. And so that was the arm that they put in there, basically. Yeah.
So I would just add that most of the items that came forward out of the board were things that kind of got to a point of escalation. Like, they weren't feeling like they were getting anywhere. And so things like, for example, the light on Mel, or when our sister, my aunt was hit,
Right.
I think they felt like things weren't getting handled, and so they went to the Citizens Affairs Board. I don't think that really it's ever been used as a mode of dealing with traditional, regular, everyday. So I think it's kind of been more of a larger scale, I'm not getting anywhere kind of complaints. Or at least that's my experience.
As an example, when we had the issues with crosswalks over at the schools, you know, so they came through the Citizens Affairs Board.
Anyone else? I would just like to add that I think anything we can do to increase the use of the board would be great, and it's kind of now on us to figure out where they fit in and what they can actually get involved in. So, okay, so Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CB 1912 on first reading passes unanimously. And I would like to note for the record that the public hearing on CB 1912 will be held on July 23rd, 2018, here in City Hall Council Chambers.
Thank you. All right, we will move to resolutions, the first one being CR 83. Joanna, read the title, please.
A resolution adopting a cash management and investment policy for the City of Northglenn, Colorado.
Move for approval.
Second.
Are you handling this one, Rob?
I think Jason is, but I
Jason
think
is?
this is council considering the updated language cash management policy and investment policy. And I think Jason has some updates.
Hey, Jason.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This policy is something that we look at every 2 years, or as needed, so it may be sooner. We're taking a look at it in 2018 as part of kind of our regular schedule. We lean on our investment advisor, Insight Investments, on this policy quite a bit as far as identifying new and updated language. That is why we have them hired, is to help us through some of these things, as well as make recommendations for our investments. The Finance Committee reviewed these changes on March 28th. They were very excited to make these changes to the policy, many of which are just updates to the language to conform with state statute, which really is what is guiding the investment and cash management policy. So overall, this sets the framework for what type of investments we're allowed to make, and really identifying that our goal is to maintain our cash and not risk it, maintain liquidity, and attain a fair market value under those circumstances of protecting the capital and meeting liquidity needs. So the changes are outlined in the memo. Again, they are pretty general in nature that mirror state statute. So can answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, we recommend approval, and the Finance Committee can chime in if they would like to share their experience.
We rely very heavily on the experts. Very heavily on.
Are there any questions for Jason? No? All right. Thank you, Jason. Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 83 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We move to CR 84. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
A resolution approving the financial policies for the City of Northglenn, Colorado.
Move for approval.
Second.
Jason?
Mr. Loveland?
We're assuming?
Again, this is a biannual review that the Finance Committee takes on. These were reviewed a couple of months ago. A couple of changes that were made really were just clarifying language. This policy really guides a broad scope of things. As you can see, budget policies, operating policies, some expenditure policies, and reserve policies specifically. The language that was updated, one section was to define in a little bit more detail what a balanced budget means. We identify through policies that we will have a balanced budget, but there's a few different ways to look at that. And so a legally balanced budget, we've outlined specifically, is where the sources of money are at least equal to the uses of money. So that's pretty broad. So that takes all your incoming revenues and reserves and basically says you're not going to spend everything. So that's a legally balanced budget. An operationally balanced budget does not use fund balance or reserves to fund operations, and that's what we typically look at here when we're going through our budget process. It does identify specifically now that reserves, fund balance, or debt may be used to fund one-time expenditures. And that's something that hasn't necessarily been defined in the policy, but I think that still is a balanced budget. It's an operationally balanced budget if we identify one-time expenditures to use reserves. And then a structurally balanced budget is really when you project out multiple years, kind of a larger term financial plan. We do that with our 5-year CIP. We did that with the water and wastewater funds. When we went through the rate increase, we project out what we need for debt and capital and make some assumptions about revenues and expenditures. But we look out multiple years to identify that we'll have an operationally balanced budget. So if we're structurally balanced, we can look out beyond 1 year and see that we will carry forward without using one operational dollars for, we won't use reserves for operating expenditures. And then additionally, the second thing that we clarified was how unassigned fund balance may be used. We didn't have a definition in there prior. So we've added language to say unassigned fund balance greater than the commitments and assignments may be considered to supplement pay-as-you-go capital outlay expenditures or to prepay existing debt. And these funds may not be used to establish or support costs that are recurring or operational in nature. So those are really the only changes. I think we made a couple of other minor edits, but nothing substantial. And again, the Finance Committee was participant in this. So if they have any commentary.
And thank you for your guidance
Yes,
through these
thank
policies,
you.
basically.
And
Yes.
the experts.
Yes.
We love you all.
Are there questions for Jason? Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And thanks again, Jason, for your help. All right, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Thank you. Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 84 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move to CR 85. Joanna, would you please read the title?
A resolution approving an agreement between the City of Northglenn and ABCO Contracting Incorporated for the 2018 Residential Sidewalk and Trail Replacement Program.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
This
Robert,
one I
going to
will
do the
do.
background.
This
Okay,
one.
thank you.
So this is the 2018 Concrete and Trail Replacement Program. In 2015, Public Works did a survey of all the city's sidewalks and trails, and this is, I believe, the third year that we will be going out and replacing areas within the sidewalks and trails. We received 7 bids from contractors. We had 12 contractors show up, but only received 7 bids, and ABCO Contracting was the low bidder. And they should start this within 10 days after notice. So if you approve tonight, we will give them notice. They will start in 10 days, and they will be done within 60 days according to the contract.
All right, thank you. Questions? Becky?
Can you tell me what the bid alternate, the 15,000, what is
The
that?
bid alternate was additional work that if the bid came back low enough, then we could add additional work into the bid. So we added additional spots that they could do if, as long as the bid came back under what we had to spend. So Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just say that if we do everything and there's 15% contingency on both the trail project and on the sidewalk project. If we were to use the 15% on both of those, we would still have $104,000 left in the balance of the project. And we would do that again next year. That would carry over.
Thank you.
Other questions? No, so Rob, I do have a little bit of heartburn because they're so much lower and there is such a difference, the highest one being that 457,000. What can possibly be different to cause such a discrepancy when you're doing concrete replacement and trail repair?
Well, it's definitely because of the local issues that are going on as far as getting subcontractors, availability of concrete, and also whether or not they already have a lot of work and they're just trying to get a bid with higher numbers. A lot of times we see that where they don't have the time to do it, but they'll throw a bid out there and hope that they'll get it for some more money that makes it worth their while, but they have other work going on. And concrete's very tough right now in the market. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other? Yes.
Have we identified the streets that, or the sidewalks that this is going to be used?
Yeah, there's some maps that show, I think they're in your packet. The red is the sidewalk and the green are the trails.
I know. Carol goes, yeah, they're just hard to see. I did get my glasses brought to me, but you know, I got it. Okay, thank you.
All right. Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and CR 85 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move to CR 86. Joanna, would you read the title?
A resolution authorizing assignment to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority of a private activity bond allocation of the City of Northglenn pursuant to the Colorado Private Activity Bond Ceiling Allocation Act.
Move to approve.
Second.
Rob, are you sharing the background this time on this one?
I can try, and I believe Becky's here if we
Oh, and
need some
Becky,
additional
okay,
help.
sure. Hi, Becky.
I'll just let her explain it. She knows it a lot better than I do.
We would like to utilize you if you are here tonight. How's that?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Dodge, Council. Becky Smith, Planning Department. Council Resolution 86 is basically a resolution that would assign Northglenn's allocation of private activity bonds for this year to the Colorado Housing and Financing Authority, also known as CHAFA. We've been working with them, and they've agreed to allocate those funds, if we assign them, to the reserve apartments, which is the lower income apartment rezoning case that you heard earlier tonight. So that would keep those dollars in our community in that case. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about the private activity bonds or CHAFA at this time.
Great. Questions for Becky?
I think it's great that we actually get to keep the dollars here, and we haven't had a project like that in a while. So.
Yeah.
It's a good one. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
We'll close that vote, and CR 86 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We move to CR 90. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
A resolution approving change order number 17 to the construction manager contract as amended between the City of Northglenn and FCI Contractors Incorporated for roadway improvements for the Northglenn Justice Center project.
Move for approval.
Second.
Rob?
So the background on this one's a little more complicated. So when we were doing the Justice Center, they pulled the asphalt bid for the intersection, thinking that they would be able to get a better bid on asphalt with our asphalt paving for this summer for the streets program. That did not happen, so that was pulled off of the contract, and now we're asking to put it back into the contract with the new money that was approved a few weeks ago. The work has already been completed, and I apologize for that. There was some misunderstanding on when the supplemental was approved. Excuse me, when the supplemental was approved, we thought that this was also approved, but it wasn't, so we need approval on the change order since it exceeds $50,000. And the work is complete, and they took the signs down today, I believe.
Yay. Any questions for Rob?
I don't have a question, but you know this is coming. So I was firm about our number, and I kind of wavered and said okay on the other appropriations, but you know, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we're certainly not going to not pave it, and it's already done, but just think it's really frustrating because I think council gave so much into increasing the total dollar amount that we were going to spend on the Justice Center, and now we're adding another $107,000. So like we're close to, what is that, almost $900,000 over? Is that total? correct?
I'm not sure. Do you know, Jason?
I mean, it is what it is, I suppose, but it's just frustrating.
I get that.
So I did have a question about this item for staff earlier today, actually. This is actually using contingency, so this is not adding money to the contract with FCI. The wording and
We're like
language.
getting in the technical side here because there's a
Right.
number that I said I wasn't thrilled with going over, and we're going over it. And I think
Oh.
other council members, past and current, made the comment that we weren't going over this number. I don't care about the contingency. I get it. But the point is we're in the end going over the number that we said we were comfortable paying. That's just my point. And that's it.
I just wanted to say that this is not in addition to the $725,000. I do understand what you're saying from the project in
Wait,
total.
it's
but
not because I could have sworn Rob just said it is.
No, it's not a part of that. It's, the money's already been appropriated. It's just a part of that additional money that was in there. So this is still within I believe this is still within the GMP for the contractor.
Correct, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think when it's all said and done, and I was thinking about this earlier too, we really want to see it all laid out on one sheet of paper. Honestly,
Yeah.
we do.
We
We
can
do.
certainly do
And I
that.
think we
Yep.
deserve that after it's all.
Absolutely.
And I
Yep.
think that's maybe sometimes we don't get that information. So we would just like to see the
Absolutely.
pricing
I
spelled
think
out. and-
Jason and I can work on that and provide that
Perfect.
to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 90 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We move to CR 91. Joanna, would you read the title, please?
A resolution appointing and setting the salary of Robert Weber as acting city manager of the city of Northglenn, Colorado.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have
Kind
nothing
of
to
is
say.
what it is. Council, do you have any questions?
Why? Yeah.
Thanks for
All right,
stepping
thank
up.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Welcome.
Does this go back to the date in which he was originally acting, or is this only as of July 3rd?
You would say it says effective July.
And the reason for that is because up until July 3rd, he had been appointed by the then city managers acting. This is dictated by when the city council appoints him.
You're not.
I just want to clarify
You're not
that this is on my salary that I'm getting paid as Public Works interim director, not as the operations manager. That's a
Which
big
hat is
difference.
it on?
Yeah.
Which one pays more?
When the city manager makes that determination in lieu of the city council, is the 10% part of that or not?
I don't know. I know that the resolution that dictates council says that it's the city council that determines the appropriate amount of compensation. So this is the city council action for its employees.
Okay, and technically he wasn't our employee. Got it.
Correct.
So it sounds like we can't. Is that how you would, we can't, can we do anything about that or not?
Now that he's your employee, you certainly can, but I
Right.
don't know the answer to what.
Can we find out?
Can you make it retroactive?
Yeah. Can you bump it back from when he started?
I don't know if he was already getting some bump, but we can certainly find out.
I can honestly tell you, I was getting additional pay for interim Public Works director,
Okay.
But not for when you step up.
but not for city manager.
Okay.
So is the council okay with proceeding as is, making it effective July?
But can we find out if he was supposed to have, like, is that a?
Again, he wasn't supposed to have by you because he was not your employee until July 3rd. So prior to July 3rd, the city manager, at that point Jim Hayes, had the authority to appoint an acting while he was in place as the city manager.
And I think we all get that, but I think the question that we're asking is when that scenario happens, because it's not a council thing, but when that scenario happens, would there be an instance where he should have gotten an increase? Or the increases only happen, like, you just don't know, or for sure, like, it wasn't supposed to happen?
I think according to what Rob said, it wasn't supposed to happen. He was getting paid as the,
Okay, I just want to make sure that it wasn't happening because we didn't drop a ball somewhere, or it wasn't happening because he wasn't supposed to get it, like,
I can check with Paula whether he should have gotten a bump under the city's.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's what
Policy
council is
is.
asking.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. If not, can we change the date? Can we make the decision to change the date? So it's not July 3rd, it's the previous date.
I mean, you can determine to pay him more, but he was not your employee pre-July 3rd.
So we can't change the date. We would just have to change the amount.
Again, he is now your employee. You can decide how to compensate him even before July 3rd. It would be inconsistent with the city's existing resolutions to do so, but you can, if you don't like the way a policy sits, you can always change the policy.
So then technically the solution could be, if he didn't get the bump that we think he should have gotten when he was appointed by the previous city manager, that period of time when he wasn't our employee, we would incorporate that here?
Again, if you don't like the rules as they exist, you can always change them. The rules as they exist only apply to your employees.
And then I have one more question. So when city manager takes a vacation and they have it, and we have an acting, at any time does that, because that's where I think then that becomes unfair, right? And so if we have like the couple days that Brooke steps in, right? He's not getting compensated for that.
Correct.
So that's the same scenario in the instance that Jim appointed Rob.
That's my understanding, but I was going to confirm with Paula just to make sure.
That feels a little unfair that we would do it at that. That's just my. But maybe we should reconsider that.
So that's an HR issue, right?
Correct.
Out of our control at this point.
It is, until they become your employee, it's part of the administrative function of the city as opposed to the function that's dictated by council.
The only thing I would add is typically acting you don't act for a month. I mean, that's, it's fine the way it is, but knowing that Mr. Hayes was not coming back was different than acting in the behalf of someone who you knew is coming back.
Right.
Because it's really kind of on you now. There's really nobody else to lean on, so.
Yeah, I would say HR would need to address that then.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Any more questions? We're good? Joanna, would you open the vote, please?
Close open.
Wait, what?
No. Are we voting?
We're voting on it as is, that it would be effective July 3rd. We can't change it.
But we can always get information later.
From HR,
and then
what they can do.
determine what they
They've
want
got
to
to
do.
change it in
Right.
their policy.
Can I ask Corey a question? Can you find out from Paula what that would be and then have that monetary number brought back to us and we can choose?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. So my thinking is we vote no on this until it comes back.
He can't come back if we don't make him our employee.
Oh. Okay. If that makes sense. Okay, I don't know. I got lost. So.
We'll fix this first, we'll pay for it, and then we'll address the problem.
Well, as long as we don't leave that hanging, like, just
Right.
forget about it.
No,
That's
no.
important.
Okay, the vote is open. Please vote.
I'll close that vote, and CR 91 passes unanimously.
Thank you. We move to communications. Jenny, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Okay, first, I want to say congrats to all of the city staff on a successful July 4th celebration. We came, my family came, we had a lot of fun. We sat and had a giant snow cone. We did the duck derby. My duck failed miserably. And we also enjoyed a really funky guitarist, and he was funky for sure. But, you know, I just want to remind folks who are still celebrating the 4th of July that the holiday is now over. It's time to put your fireworks away. And, you know, try to be respectful of your neighbors, their pets, and their lives, and just kind of knock it off. Fireworks are illegal in our city, so Sorry to be a Debbie Downer, but you can, anyway. And then secondly, Antonio and I held our summer edition Ward 4 meeting just about a week and a half ago. We saw a lot of new faces, a lot of old faces, and we had nearly 70 residents come out on one of the hottest days so far this summer. And it was extraordinary. It was so much fun. And I want to say thank you so much to staff, especially the Parks Department, who made sure that we had plenty of chairs. Thank you to Susan, who made sure that we were totally stocked up on ice cream. I think every resident probably had 2, if not 3 ice cream sandwiches, and it was fantastic. So thank you all so much for everything that you did to make that a success. I think it's something we may continue in the future. It was definitely nice to have a change of venue and get some fresh air. Plus, I think having the meeting right next to a park made it a whole lot more family friendly. So if any of the other wards want to try it out, we're happy to give you some pointers, but it was a lot of fun. I wanted to talk through a couple of things that we heard during our ward meeting. I apologize, this is a little bit of a longer update than I would typically give. But first we did an update on traffic calming, and we heard from a lot of residents their thoughts on our solutions and the way that we're moving forward. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear is that they want us to figure out how we actually manage traffic calming via enforcement. Right, so making sure that people are getting tickets. And so, I think that Antonio and I will probably try and sit down with the chief sometime soon to figure out what options we have. And so I want to give everybody a heads up there. Additionally, we heard concerns about the ditch cleanup not being fully completed over by the high school, and how the hot water is now starting to make the area smell. So if just bringing that up. We had some interest in who our next city manager will be, and folks wanted to ensure that we were being smart financially in determining who that person was and not going out and spending a ton of money on a huge search. We had some conversation about upcoming summer programming, and we also had a question from an individual who's on our local fire protection board around whether or not the city is going to be implementing any sort of fire pit ban or fire ban across the city. So I want to flag that for us. I don't know if we have a policy on the books to determine at what point we institute a fire ban, but I think that in these times where it's hot and it's dry, I think that it's something that we should think about. And we can table that discussion for another time. We also had an update about how everybody can do their part to conserve water. And it was kind of neat because we had a resident come forward and share that he and his family were trying to conserve more water. And one of the things that they were doing is trying to they were converting their yard from primarily grass to gravel and some landscaping, trying to make it more water-wise. So they're spending less money in the long run. And he said, do you guys have any sort of program that offers an incentive to residents when they get rid of their grass or they promote a more water-wise yard? And unfortunately, the answer is no. And he mentioned that the city of Lafayette provides a program to residents for up to $1,000 of credit on their water bill when they transition from a yard that has primarily grass to something that's significantly more water-wise to help kind of offset the cost of making that transition. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring to all of you tonight is I know that we're starting to figure out, staff has been working really hard to develop our 2019 budget, and I was hoping to ask for council consensus to figure out if something like that could work in Northglenn, what some of the surrounding communities do, and if there's a small sort of pilot project that we could implement in 2019 to help our residents start conserving more water, because I think that that's something that's at the top of all of our minds when we think about potential threats is not having enough water. So that was one of the things that I'm bringing to you tonight to ask for consensus.
I think we should have it brought to a study session.
Yeah,
I think it's a great
and
suggestion.
that's what I want is, have staff go and get the information, bring it back to all of us, and let's talk about it and decide whether or not it makes sense for us. But I think it's a major step forward in terms of trying to figure out how we're promoting residents saving more water.
Good idea.
Yeah, I'm definitely open for the conversation, yeah.
Cool. Okay. You got what you need?
Yep, we'll have Tammy do some research and bring it forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The next thing that was brought to my attention during the ward meeting was I spoke with a number of residents who live directly across the street from Hillcrest. And they said that they just got a new crosswalk put in, which they were really excited about. However, they're having problems, continued problems, with people parking and blocking their driveways. And a resident shared with me that her husband leaves for work every single day right as parents are dropping their children off to school. And it's, it continues to be a problem in the summer because Hillcrest is running summer school. And so they're not really experiencing any amount of relief from having, that additional traffic of people coming through and parents stopping and parking because they think it's just going to take a minute or two to drop off their child. And it's definitely having an impact on them. And they, had asked what can be done. And so I wanted to come and bring another item to potentially review for a study session around how much would it cost to do a permitting process similar to what we have over at the high school around the perimeter of Hillcrest. And if that works over there, is it something that could be replicated around the rest of the city if the residents want it?
Would a permitting process work in this? Because technically it sounds like to me that parents are just stopping and not necessarily parking in these areas. So they wouldn't seek a permit anyway, or they wouldn't, you wouldn't need to because you're not really parking, you're just kind of
So they said that they're not, so they are indeed parking and they're blocking in driveways. And these individual residents have said that they've had multiple altercations with parents because they need to move their vehicle and they have a grandfathered in driveway that's gravel. And they've got the council resolution or whatever it is that permits them to have that. And that's where their truck is parked. And that area along with their driveway keeps getting blocked, as does the area where the crosswalk is starting. And so I don't know what the option is, but I think if they're experiencing it at Hillcrest, other areas where other neighborhood schools are throughout our city may be having similar problems. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's a potential solution, and I'd love to have staff look at how can we kind of ease the burden of having a living next to a neighborhood school.
Jenny, I think I'd be willing to meet with the Hillcrest principal and with the staff from the school district to talk about what we can do. I know in some of the school situations, they put cones out so people don't park, and maybe we can work with the school to have some of their monitors do that, or maybe we can figure out some way to help them do that. But I'm willing to have that conversation with the Hillcrest principal and find out where we can go with it.
And I appreciate that. They said that they've also had a conversation with the Hillcrest principal. They tried cones and their cones got run over.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, their cones got run over. And I believe at one point they submitted 9 CDs worth of pictures documenting their experience over the course of a year or longer. Additionally, they shared a CD with me when I drove out to take a look at what they were experiencing. So I don't know what the answer is. I'm just asking for consensus to try and figure out how much it would cost to be able to do some sort of permit, or if there's something else that we can do to provide some relief.
I'm wondering about more enforcement.
Enforcement may be the answer.
That's probably good.
Unfortunately, you just have to call every time someone does that because they're going to park there whether they have a permit or not.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no enforcement of the parking there to begin with, requiring permits.
It is.
I think that we could at least have a conversation around different ways that can change. I mean, we've had the conversations about the STEM schools over in Ward 2 and the issues that we were having with traffic flow and drop-off and things like that. So we did have those conversations, and, I think we could do it on a study session. Well, and I'll tell you, Adams County, the school district came out or the janitor there did and sprayed curbs and stuff, and that didn't go over well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but what I'd love is a study session to figure out how we can kind of minimize the impacts of living across the street from a neighborhood.
I think, would it be appropriate to also, I know we don't want to get too overwhelmed, but like, how big is this problem? I know that the STEM schools and, that's an ongoing issue, but I honestly don't know about any of the other schools in Northglenn, how many residents are, it might not just be like a Ward 4 issue,
Yeah.
so.
It's a pervasive problem around
It
every
is.
school, I could tell you, from my 20 years of working at the school district. It's a pervasive problem.
So does that warrant a conversation around how can we do better? How do we fix it?
I think it warrants a conversation that you should, look into it and give us some choices or something, what,
Yeah, and how can we
especially
partner
your
with the
background.
school district to make things better too? I mean, it's a team approach, I think, so.
Failed, but
That's failed,
That's a good,
but we
good option. I think that one of the things that we looked at is the street safety, because it is a problem at all of the schools. It's not just there. I mean, we've heard from residents down by the middle school that they let them out in the middle of the crosswalk, in the middle of the street. I mean, it's a parent problem. Parent. Yeah.
I mean, I thought
But
that's
it
why
has-
we're doing all the traffic studies around the schools right now. And
We prioritize them.
yeah, I mean, I don't know when that particular
just-
one is coming
It probably
forward,
would
but
be a good revisit for, because that's not something that has been discussed on new council, but
I'm
to
happy
bring
to
that
reach out to the
forward.
school district and talk to their folks that do the safety around the schools.
But maybe give that information to the new council members, what we've been doing. And
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And Rob, when you look into that, could you find out what is the process at that particular school for
Mhm.
carpool?
Right.
Because sometimes that can be fixed at the school
Right,
site.
yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then the very last thing is, everybody should mark their calendars. Our next and final ward meeting for the year is September 18th. We hope that it will be at Vantage Point High School, but we still have to confirm that. And we'll be discussing the new zoning code update and talking through some of the potential changes. And then also we're going to do a meet and greet with all of the candidates for the state legislature who will represent Northglenn. And that includes former Northglenn City Council member Kyle Malika, who won his primary and will be on the ballot. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Northglenn City Council has ever had a council member who served and then went to the state legislature.
Yeah, we did.
We did?
Harold Snyder.
Okay, well, he'll be the second then, so that's really exciting.
Mhm.
And I hope that you all can join us. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Right.
Julie?
So my updates are minimal. I think that next to Jenny, I always feel like I let everyone down. Sorry, guys.
That's okay, wait till you hear mine. Go for it.
Okay. So I think one thing that Marcy and I really need to prepare is how are we going to top Ward 4 meetings? Because you definitely set the bar.
Or the Justice Center with a barbecue.
I know. I really think we could do it this time.
I really
So-
heard that, giving out gifts at your award, Julie, really helps.
You tried that last time.
So we'll see. We'll see if we could beat Ward 4, but we'll do our best. Other than that, I just have a personal communication, an update. Kyle and I are expecting our third child, so are excited for number 3. I'm due at the beginning of January. So. Yes,
Congratulations.
I will be getting larger. Thanks.
All right, so I guess to say that we are having our ward meetings September 28th.
Yes.
September 28th, and it'll be at the Justice Center, and it'll be our annual barbecue. So maybe we'll top it just because it's at the Justice Center. So
Come.
great.
Everyone
Come. So I wanted to give a public acknowledgement of Preston Gibson, who is our Excel representative. I reached out to him on Friday. There was a situation at Northglenn High School that potentially was going to stop their construction going on. And I just really wanted to say that it took me just a matter of a phone call to call Preston. He was on it, and like within an hour and a half, he had crew out to the site to deal with it. And I just really want to acknowledge that Preston, I mean, he took total charge of that, and I just greatly appreciate that. So it's nice to be able to have, you know, representatives at utilities or what have you that have our back as council people. And I know Sherry was just elated to hear from him and be able to have his support. So thank you, Preston, for that. I feel awkward not looking at a camera over here.
I know, it just feels like it's empty.
And then I wanted to say I had a great time at the 4th of July. It is so early every 4th of July. We have to be there at 5 for the walk and run, but it is always great to see everybody come out for that. Lots of goodies from the senior bake sale. I think I heard something like $1,700 they raised, and so that is wonderful. So also, you don't have to love sweets. You can always just donate to them. Gladly take your donation. And then I did the judging for the bikes and the pooches, and that was awesome. And just thanks to staff for all of the effort. I mean, everybody is out there so early in the morning, the day before, clean up the day after, and that's just a really tough job, plus in all the heat. So thank you. And then 2 more things. The Northglenn Community Foundation, you may have noticed it as you walked in at the entrance of the police department, upstairs at the front desk, and then at the rec center there are bins. Northglenn Community Foundation is collecting school supplies and backpacks that we every year then take over to a Precious Child and potentially other programs. Our goal this year is to supply a Precious Child with 200 backpacks. So you can drop anything off, paper or whatever, you just want to pick it up. I meant to look up, the state does participate in a no sales tax day on school supplies. I just forgot what it is. So please just pick up, you know, a handful of things, and yes, it was in the paper. So you can just drop that off. Like I said, we'll be taking it through the end of the month and then assembling those bags. And then lastly, Pam did not mention, but they have the Concert in the Park series. I think it's their last one on Friday. So that is held at Wright Farms.
Awesome. Thank you for that wonderful report, Jenny. You leave me speechless. But we did have a great turnout, and there was several residents standing. There was no place for them to sit. So we do another one. We need to make sure we have more chairs out there. I heard from a lot of people that it was one of the best award meetings that they've ever attended. So that's not a tribute to us.
Absolutely, positively. Did you have a very outstanding?
Yeah, that would make it the best one.
That's not a tribute to us. This is a tribute to the people who were there presenting the information. You know, it's not about Jenny and I. We don't do this for Jenny and I. We do this for our community. Thank you.
I can't say anything more about the 4th of July Festival. I was also there. I echo everyone's sentiments. Staff is great, puts it on every year, does a great job. The one different thing I got to do this year above the other things I get to do was to pick a mayor's choice from the car show, and that was pretty amazing because I picked a very cool Impala, so that was new. And I did want to remind everybody, I know it's like mid-July, but Magic Fest will be coming up shortly, August 17th and 18th. That is our August festival, and it is so much fun. They have quite a great lineup this year of magicians and shows, so check out the website for some info. And come say hi to me this Wednesday because I'll be working the beer stand for the NAHF at the Concert in the Park. The band is the Hash Tones, a mix of reggae, rock, pop, and blues. It starts at 6:30. It's free. Bring lawn chairs. There'll be food, there'll be beer, and there'll be music and friends. So it doesn't get better than that. That's it.
Was that Wednesday?
It's Wednesday. This Wednesday.
Actually, I did 4th of July. And I got to help the judging of the kids, the trikes. I didn't do the dogs, but I did go over and look at the cars, which were totally awesome. Saw some real good friends over there that had great cars and just loved it. I love that one with all the ornate horns on it. I totally wanted to drive that bad boy home. And then that big orange truck, yeah, they were really cool. Other than that, we have not set the time for our ward meeting, but we're thinking about it sometime next month, you know. We'll let you know.
Or
we can have two wards coming together, so we can outdo Ward 4.
Oh, it's a
So we're
competition.
having a little competition.
Good luck with that one.
And we will have a mariachi band.
We'll bring the mariachi band, only if I get to sing along. Yeah. But basically, that's all I have. I did have a lot of complaints. I talked to you a little bit about that, about the fireworks over in Ward 2. I'd like to echo Jenny's comments earlier. The season's over. We can stop. The signs I felt were, on one hand, I thought they were really nice and people read them and people paid attention. On the other hand, in Ward 2, some people chose to take their fireworks in between the houses or to their backyards. Now, echoing right on the comment about the fire bans, yeah, it bothered me personally that someone was lighting fireworks off in their backyard enough for me to say something. But I think that when we talk about the signs next year, we need to talk about increasing the fine, because we have a low-level fine, and maybe getting more out and more proactively.
Sure.
And I have no idea why Ward 2 went crazy.
They weren't.
I think it was everywhere.
It was between the houses and my windows were shaking and it was just getting weird. So I'd appreciate you guys if y'all just, y'all just stop shooting off fireworks now so my dog can have a normal tummy. And that's all I have.
I also was at the 4th of July, and
Where I saw you.
yeah, and it's always awesome and it gets better all the time. So just thank the staff for all they do. I mean, they do get out early and they work late, and it's always awesome. The other thing, just to again a shout out to the staff, is Bike to Work. The station was busy, and again, the staff was there before we got there. Putting up the tent and all that stuff. So it was very successful. So that's all I have.
All right. Well, 4th of July was fun. We decorated our bikes and our dogs and did that part, which was really fun. But just to thank you to Amanda, because she gets up very early, with our youth commission kiddos, and they volunteered to pass out water during the run. So that was an early morning for them as well. So it was nice to see them volunteering again. Fireworks, though, I would love an update on actual tickets given out. I really would like to know.
You're going to be surprised in a minute.
I am really surprised because I was really cranky. Fox Run was just a disaster. I mean, it was just fireworks every other house. The signs, they just graffitied on top of them. There was a ton, no, seriously, there was a ton of disrespect to the city. And I did see the animal control truck just sitting. And I was like, what's happening? It was just sort of observing the fireworks go off every other house. Didn't move. And now I understand traffic was tight, but we had talked about putting officers on bikes. I didn't see any. It was crazy. My neighborhood was lit up till 3 a.m. And I just feel like if we're going to bother enforcing it, then we have to enforce it, because I felt like my neighborhood was laughing at us, and it was really disrespectful. So I'd love some stats on that, and I'd like to push it forward a little harder.
Okay.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
No, thank you. Joanna?
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
Rob?
I have some stats on tickets for fireworks. I talked to Chief yesterday, or this morning, and he said that they received 120 calls, but they only issued 8 tickets. There were 4 issued in Ward 1, 3 in Ward 2, 1 in Ward 4, and 0 in Ward 3. So I think part of the issue is the number of officers. I think he had 6 officers available to respond, and unfortunately, I think that's one of the worst days for other police activities as well. So I think we just have to talk to Chief and see, is there some other thing that we can possibly do? But I agree, more education earlier and trying to get more people involved might help, but there are always going to be those that just disobey. So that's going to be tough. The only other thing I have is I became a grandfather for the 5th and 6th time. On July 3rd, my son and his wife had twin boys on the 3rd.
Wow.
And
That's
they're
like,
all
congratulations.
healthy and home, and everybody's doing great. So,
Very good.
so I was busy on the 4th babysitting their daughter, who's 3.5.
Oh, there you go.
So did you say 5 and 6?
5th and 6th. I have 6 grandchildren now. Yes,
You're
and I'm only 39.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Corey?
I can't beat that, and I fear becoming a grandfather, so nothing.
Being a grandfather, is one damn parent, I can tell you that.
Fine, we move to public invited to be heard, limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Statement should be related to an item previously addressed by council during the meeting. Tim, you're the public tonight, nothing? Okay.
Tim, did my Ducks not win?
Yeah, you want to give us a Ducky Derby update?
I don't really know who won yet, but we're trying to figure it out tomorrow.
Why is it taking out so long this time?
Rosie and...
Oh,
The excitement's almost too much for me.
Thank you. Okay, then I would make a motion to adjourn and move into executive session pursuant to Section 4.5, Parent G of the City of Northglenn Home Rule Charter for negotiations concerning any contracts except those required to be the subject of competitive bidding.
Second.
Amanda, would you open the vote, please?
The vote is open.
Please vote. Oh, sorry.
I'll close that vote, and the motion to adjourn to executive session passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Marcy, unfortunately, there is no Colorado Day this year.
No?
I was just trying to pull it up. It literally.